Chapter 2017. If the Battle of Wanxiangxi was the battle to make a name for Three World Island, then this battle against Zixian's invasion was the battle to make a name for themselves in Jade Snail Galaxy. With their current strength, they were indeed qualified to compete with the enemy, but Lu Yi didn't want to be an equal. He wanted Zixian's army to never return. To achieve this goal, there must be a prerequisite. Their strength was far greater than the enemy's, and they had the advantage of crushing the enemy. In this way, they could defeat the enemy in the shortest time possible, and at the same time, avoid large-scale casualties on their side. Mount Fangxuan could send about 10 Rizhao, just enough to fight against Zixian's 10 demon venerables, but it still wasn't enough. Half a day later, Lu Yi appeared in the Soul Race's ancestral land. He went to visit Su Yuan as usual. When they met, Su Yuan saw him. Rizhao. It wasn't surprising because Lu Yi was already at the peak of Yu Yao when he came last time. It seemed that he could break through at any time. I was lucky. Lu Yi nodded. Since you've broken through, your problem is solved? Su Yuan was undoubtedly asking about the flower of qi. It's solved. That's good. Su Yuan looked relieved. After so many years of friendship, he had long regarded Lu Yi as a junior. Although Lu Yi wasn't from the Soul Race, no Soul Race member could be valued by the will of the ancestral land. After Rizhao, it's the cultivation of God. The first thing you need to do is to refine a soul-subduing secret technique. To a large extent, your future cultivation will be based on this. When you have time, I'll tell you more. He undoubtedly saw that Lu Yi had come for something else this time, so he asked, "What are you here for?" "My homeland is in trouble, so I'm here to ask for help." Lu Yi stated his purpose. "What's the matter?" Su Yuan asked. Lu Yi quickly explained the Zixian's attack. Su Yuan understood. "You want to ask the Soul Race to send some people, right?" "Yes." Lu Yi nodded. "No problem." Su Yuan agreed. If it were anyone else, the Soul Race would definitely ignore them. Their race was even more aloof from worldly affairs than the hominid race. Their living environment was special, so there was basically no possibility of conflict between them and other races. But since Lu Yi asked, they naturally wouldn't refuse. It wasn't the first time that the Soul Race had helped Lu Yi. Last time, when the Filth Race invaded. "How many people do you need?" Su Yuan asked. "The more, the better." For the time being, the only enemies he knew were Zixian and the other 10 demon venerables. As for the number of demon cultivators that came, he was not sure. However, He Yun had used the word army before, which meant that there were quite a number of demon cultivators. Su Yuan tapped his finger and pondered for a moment. Then he said, "Right now, the number of Rizhao that can be dispatched, including this old man, is about 10. Is that enough?" He did not mention under the sun, but since there were already 10 under the sun, the number of souls under the sun would definitely not be small. Enough. Lu Yi did not expect to be able to invite so many Spiritas from Rizhao. In his plan, he only needed 3 to 5 Spiritas from Rizhao. Now, with the addition of 10 Spiritas from Rizhao, Zixian would win this battle? The fact that Zixian and the other 10 demon venerables were dispatched showed that they attached great importance to the matter of 9 regions. However, they probably did not expect that they would kick an iron plate. "Wait a moment, this old man needs some time to wake them up," Su Yuan said as he closed his eyes, and his soul power flowed out. Normally, when there was nothing to do, the Spiritas would sleep on the Lotus Lands. The stronger the Spiritas, the more this was the case. Therefore, most of the time, the entire Spiritas space would be very empty. Only a few Spiritas with low cultivation would often show themselves. Lu Yi stood quietly at the side and waited. After a while, powerful auras emerged from all over the Soul Race's ancestral land and gathered here. In less than an incense stick's worth of time, 10 more figures appeared in front of Lu Yi. All of them had deep soul power. Obviously, they were the Rizhao that Su Yuan mentioned before. However, the number was 1 more than what Su Yuan said. No matter who came, they all looked at Lu Yi with great interest. Obviously, they had all heard of him. Back then, a human had obtained the acknowledgement of the ancestral land's will, entered the ancestral land space, and obtained the rainbow god lotus from the lotus pond. The Spiritas had heard of it even though Rizhao had been sleeping most of the time. In particular, this human even brought their own sacred beast to the soul race. He was more like the legendary successor of the Tao tree. The soul race had a long lifespan, and all of them were experienced and knowledgeable. How could they not know that such a character would have the potential to soar into the sky in the future? Therefore, even if their seniority and age were far higher than Lu Ye's, under the premise that Lu Yi had been promoted to Rizhao, they still called him fellow Taoist. Lu Yi greeted them one by one and thanked them sincerely. Not long after the 10 Rizhao arrived, groups of soul race cultivators from various lotus lands gathered here, and the number of people gradually increased. These little brats. Su Yuan looked at the clansmen who kept gathering here and couldn't help but laugh and scold. They've been cooped up for too long. It's rare for them to have a chance to go out, so they came here when they heard the news. One of the soul race, Rizhao, stroked his beard and said with a smile, "Let them be. Can we drive them back?" Su Yuan shook his head helplessly. He didn't plan to gather so many clansmen just now, but since things had come to this, he could only let them be. The rules of the soul race were strict, and clansmen rarely had the chance to leave the ancestral land. Encountering such a chance, they naturally didn't want to miss it. Roar! Suddenly, a tiger's roar rang out. Lu Ye's heart trembled, and he hurriedly looked in the direction of the sound. He saw a majestic giant white tiger flying in his direction. Wherever the white tiger passed, all the soul race cultivators stopped in unison and bowed respectfully, their brows filled with sincerity. On the white tiger's back, a figure sat upright and waved at him. Behind the white tiger, there was a large group of soul race cultivators following closely. Lu Yi smiled and stepped forward to meet them. The figure on the white tiger also flew up and rushed towards Lu Yi. She threw herself into his arms and hugged him tightly. "I missed you so much." Yi's small face was buried in Lu Ye's chest, and her muffled voice sounded. She hugged Lu Yi even tighter, as if she never wanted to let go. Lu Yi hugged her soft body and patted her gently. Light flowed around Hu Po's body, and he instantly turned into the size of a cat. He jumped up and landed on Lu Ye's shoulder, rubbing his head against his face. The surrounding soul race clansmen looked at this scene with complicated feelings. They had experienced how difficult it was to serve holy beasts over the years, and in their hearts, their race's holy beasts were sacred and inviolable. When had they ever seen a holy beast so docile? In his arms, Yi looked up at Lu Yi. "Did you miss me?" "I did." Lu Yi nodded. "Like hell you missed me." Yi angrily struggled out of Lu Ye's arms and put her hands on her waist, looking like she was very difficult to coax. "You haven't come to see us for a long time, and you didn't tell us such a big thing happened this time. If Elder Su Yuan hadn't summoned us, I was going to go," Lu Yi hurriedly explained. He did indeed have this thought, but considering that there might be some risks in the battle with Zi Xian this time, he dismissed this thought. However, he didn't expect that Su Yuan would summon Yi and Hu Per as well. "I won't listen, I won't listen." Yi covered her ears with both hands and turned her back to him. Lu Yi took a step forward, pulled her into his arms, and whispered in her ear. Yi rolled her eyes and glanced at him proudly. "You said it, you can't go back on your words." "I said it," Lu Yi nodded. Yi showed a satisfied expression. Lu Yi raised his head and looked ahead. Two figures were coming together. Fellow Taoist Li Shang. Lu Yi smiled and nodded. Li Shang was his first contact with the soul race. Back then, she was captured by a Rizhao and put up for auction in the Myriad Elephant Chamber of Commerce. Lu Yi spent a lot of money to buy her, and in the future, the estrangement between them gradually disappeared and he gained her trust. Lu Ye's initial plan was to find a place for the Immortal Essence Guards to stay, but he didn't expect that he would also gain great benefits by coincidence. "Long time no see," Li Shang replied with a smile. Lu Yi looked at the figure next to Li Shang. "City Lord, long time no see." This was the City Lord of Immortal Essence City, Zhang Zishan. Back then, all the Immortal Essence Guards followed Li Shang and settled on her 5-colored lotus continent. Now, under Su Yuan's summons, everyone followed. Lu Yi saw many familiar figures behind Zhang Zishan. Yu Qing, Lu Datong, the butcher, the scholar, the blind fortune-teller, the gambler Lu Sanbao, Hong Yu, and Shi Weining, who was holding a pipa and looked pitiful. These immortal essence guards had interacted with him in the past. Back then, they were not strong, but because of the uniqueness of Immortal Essence City, they could survive for a long time. But now, each of them had extraordinary soul power. The ancestral land of the soul race nurtured people, especially Li Shang's five-colored lotus continent. The quality was not low, and it was most suitable for the Immortal Essence Guards to live and cultivate. Over the years, each of them had made great progress. Zhang Zishan smiled and said, "The mission of the Immortal Essence Guards is to protect 9 states. Now that 9 states is in trouble, what should the Immortal Essence Guards do?" He looked at Lu Yi, but these words were directed at the Immortal Essence Guards behind him. Fight to the death! Fight to the death! Fight to the death! Deafening shouts sounded in unison. Compared to the soul race who had not experienced many disputes, the Immortal Essence Guards, although there were not many of them, were a real iron-blooded army. In the past, in order to protect 9 states, they could take the initiative to give up their bodies, which showed their courage and courage. Now, it was time for them to contribute. This was the moment that every Immortal Essence Guard longed for. Even the soul race couldn't help but be moved when they saw this scene. The shouts still echoed in their ears. Lu Ye's heart was surging. Looking at the Immortal Essence Guards, he bowed and said, "It is the fortune of 9 states to have all of you. It is the fortune of all living beings in 9 states." Zhang Zishan returned the salute and said, "It is the greatest fortune of 9 states to have you." Su Yuan interrupted them, "It's time to go. If we don't go now, there will be more and more people." He didn't expect that this summons would make the entire ancestral land of the soul race so excited. If they continued to gather like this, the soul race could easily win this battle. End of this chapter. Chapter 2018. Moments later, in Jade Conch Galaxy, where the soul race's ancestral land was connected, several figures suddenly appeared out of thin air. They were the soul race's helpers. Lu Yi led the way to receive the incoming soul race clansmen. Su Yuan and the other Rizhao brought up the rear. More and more people came. After an incense stick of time, when Su Yuan and the others appeared, no more soul race clansmen came. Those who wanted to come were stopped by Su Yuan. Lu Yi did a rough count. The soul race had sent 11 Rizhao, more than 100 Yu Yao, and thousands of Xingxiu. Compared to the soul race's overall foundation, this force was insignificant. But it was more than enough to deal with Zixian. Where do we go now? Su Yuan came to Lu Yi and asked. "Everyone, please follow me." Lu Yi called out and led the way. Yi rode over on Hu Pe and beckoned to Lu Yi. Lu Yi landed on Hu Pe and pulled Yi into his arms, talking and laughing with her. Su Yuan and the other Rizhao used their magic power to cover the entire soul race army. They did not slow down at all. Half a day later, they arrived at Minuscule Mountain. After Lu Ye's explanation, Su Yuan and the others realized that this ordinary-looking meteorite-like object in front of them was the famous Minuscule Mountain. They were shocked. Even with Su Yuan's long lifespan, he had never come into contact with Minuscule Mountain. He did not expect to have a chance this time. He was curious about the relationship between Lu Yi and Minuscule Mountain. The Soul Race army quickly entered Minuscule Mountain. Chen Xianhai and the other 2 sensed the commotion and hurriedly came to greet them. They were shocked to see that Lu Yi had summoned so many reinforcements. And these reinforcements were the legendary Soul Race. Both the minion race of Minuscule Mountain and the Soul Race were famous races in the universe. The minion race of Minuscule Mountain was not so bad. In the past, when the 3 divisions of Minuscule Mountain roamed the universe, others had some opportunities to come into contact with them. But the Soul Race was different. Many experts knew that the Soul Race had an ancestral land, but no one knew where it was or how to enter it. Usually, it was rare to see a Soul Race clansman, much less this Soul Race army. Chen Xianhai and the others did not dare to delay and personally received Su Yuan and the others. There was much to be said when they met. Lu Yi had already arrived at the foot of the Immortal Spirit Peak, where a group of cultivators had gathered, led by his 3 blood servants. Previously, he had asked Little Nine to pass down an order in his name to gather the people who could fight in the 9 regions. The efficiency of Little Nine's side naturally did not need to be mentioned. In less than a day, except for some of the 9 region star mansions who were injured or unable to move, the rest were all here. Everyone was on high alert. They only knew that the 9 provinces was about to face the threat of an extremely powerful force. Life and death were imminent, and a great battle was about to erupt. Therefore, those who felt that they could participate didn't fall behind. It could be said that almost all of them came out. This courage and determination made Lu Yi feel gratified. The atmosphere of the 9 provinces was like this, so why would he be afraid of not becoming strong in the future? Lu Yi didn't stay for too long. He told them to stay put and wait for further orders before leaving again. Returning to the Immortal Spirit Peak, the 3 Rizhao of the Hominid clan and the Rizhao of the Soul clan were chatting happily. Seeing his return, they all looked at him. Su Yuan asked, "When will the battle begin?" Lu Yi replied, "I still need to make some preparations." He looked at Chen Xianhai. "Have you informed the South and West?" Chen Xianhai nodded. "I've already informed them. There's no problem with the 2 divisions. As for how many people you need, you can tell them yourself. The formation has already been prepared. As the master of Mount Fengsuan, you can activate the formation much more easily than us." Su Yuqing stood up. "Follow me." Lu Yi hurriedly followed. After the 2 of them left, the Rizhao of the Soul clan slowly regained his senses. He looked at Chen Xianhai and asked, "Who did you say is the master of Mount Fengsuan?" The one who spoke suspected that he had heard wrongly. Since ancient times, Mount Fengsuan had always been the Mount Fengsuan of the Hominid clan. When Mount Fengsuan was mentioned, everyone would think of the Hominid clan. Why did he seem to have heard something incredible just now? Chen Xianhai smiled and said, "Didn't junior brother Lu tell you? A few years ago, he helped our clan find the core of Mount Fengsuan and even refined it. Therefore, he is now the master of Mount Fengsuan." "There's such a thing?" Rizhao of the Soul clan looked surprised, his heart trembling. Thinking about it carefully, Lu Yi was the successor of the Dao tree and was valued by the will of the Soul clan's ancestral land. Now, he was even the master of Mount Fengsuan. Any one of these was enough to make a mediocre person soar into the sky. With all 3, Su Yuan could not imagine how great Lu Ye's achievements would be in the future. It should be known that Mount Fengsuan was a supreme treasure of the universe. Although it had been split into 3 divisions, now that the core had been retrieved, the 3 divisions would be reunited sooner or later. When that time came, it would undoubtedly mean that Lu Yi had a supreme treasure of both offense and defense in his hands. In the entire universe, who could be his match? Only Su Yuan had a calm expression. This was because Lu Yi had used the Soul clan's ancestral land to move the core of Mount Fengsuan. He had seen it with his own eyes. Lu Yi had already followed Su Yuqing to the prepared formation. Following Su Yuqing's guidance, he sat cross-legged on the formation and immersed himself in it. In the next moment, he felt an extremely strange feeling. It was as if he had turned into Mount Fengsuan. In the distance, in 2 different directions in the starry sky, there were 2 auras of the same origin that were approaching. One was near, the other was far. Lu Yi understood that these were the southern and western Mount Fengsuan. Under the guidance of the core, they were converging here. The near one was the southern one, and the far one was the western one. As the master of Mount Fengsuan, he could now freely mobilize the foundation of Mount Fengsuan. Using this to activate the formation, he could easily connect to the other 2 divisions. Not long after, he used the formation to establish contact with the other 2 divisions. After some discussion, he confirmed the number of cultivators coming to support him. The southern and western divisions were still very enthusiastic. They each prepared a large army, from the constellations to Rizhao. But Lu Yi considered that they already had enough troops for this battle. Thus, he only allowed Rizhao and Yu Yao to come to support him. As for the constellations, he did not need them. This level of military strength was already enough. The one who could truly decide victory or defeat on the battlefield was still Rizhao. Moreover, this kind of teleportation was also very draining. It was not only Lu Ye's strength that was depleted, but also the foundation of Mount Fangsuan itself. Fewer constellations coming over would also reduce the depletion of Mount Fangsuan's foundation. After a while, figures flashed above the formation. Ri Zhao and Yu Yao from the southern and western divisions appeared one after another. The three divisions of Mount Fangtan each had a different number of Ri Zhao. Among them, the eastern division had the least, with only 3. The southern division had 4, led by the oldest, Yu Qinglu. The western division had the most, with a total of 6. Back then, the one who escorted Lu Yi to the mystic blood magic eye was Zhang Kuan from the western division. In the entire Miniman tribe, there were 13 Ri Zhao. This was already quite a lot. And this was after Mount Fangsuan had split. If Mount Fangsuan had not split, there would be even more Ri Zhao. This time, when Lu Yi requested reinforcements, other than Yu Qinglu who stayed behind to defend the southern division, the other 3 Ri Zhao came to the eastern division. It was the same for the western division. 5 Ri Zhao came directly. Including the 3 from the eastern division, the Miniman tribe alone had 11 Ri Zhao. This was exactly the same number of Ri Zhao as the Soul tribe. Apart from that, about 50 Yu Yao from the 2 divisions came each, about 100 people in total. That was enough. Zixian's army this time was unknown, but Lu Yi believed that with the manpower he had gathered, it was enough to crush the other side. This was because they had too much of an advantage in terms of Ri Zhao. As usual at Immortal Spirit Peak, the Ri Zhao gathered in the main hall. There were 22 of them. It was rare to see so many Ri Zhao gathered in one place. The only time Lu Yi had seen so many Ri Zhao gathered together was when he received the powerhouses from the various galaxies on the 3-world island not long ago. But the situation back then was different from now. Junior brother Lu, everyone is here. Let's talk about the arrangements? Chen Xianhai looked at Lu Yi. Lu Yi got up and bowed in a circle. Senior Yi, on behalf of the hundreds of millions of lives in the 3 major realms of our galaxy, I thank all of you for your support. With your support in this battle, the Zixian army will definitely not be able to return. Everyone smiled but did not say anything. But then again, Lu Yi was probably the only one in the world who could summon the full support of the Soul tribe and the Miniman tribe with a single call. Because of Lu Yi, the 2 tribes that were not supposed to have any interaction with each other had gathered here. According to the information I received, Zixian's army will follow a route to invade the Jade Snail Galaxy. Their destination is the 9 states, but on their way, they will pass by the Qingli Dao world. So my idea is to stop them before they reach the Qingli Dao world, to prevent them from causing trouble when they pass by. Everyone nodded when they heard this. This was a very thorough plan, and it was something they had to take precautions against. In the starry sky, Zixian's reputation was not bad, but it was not good either. The Qingli Dao world could not stop them. Lu Yi looked at the sunlight of the Miniman tribe. Now, the armies of the 9 states, the Miniman tribe, and the Soul tribe are gathered at Mount Fangsuan. If we rush over like this, it will take a lot of time. There are thousands of cultivators from the 3 realms waiting at the Qingli Dao world. So I want to drive Mount Fangsuan over and meet them directly. This will save the army time. Moreover, with Mount Fangsuan as support, if there is a battle, if they are injured, they can hide in Mount Fangsuan to heal and reduce casualties. Lu Yi had considered this before. Currently, in Fangsuan Mountain, there were less than 10,000 cultivators from the human clan, the Soul clan, and the humanoid clan in the 9 states. However, there was not much difference. Even the central battleship could not accommodate such a force. If they wanted to bring them to the Qingli Dao world, it would take a long time. However, if they drove Fangsuan Mountain directly, the situation would be different. It would save time and effort. End of chapter. Chapter 2019. Fangsuan Mountain itself had a strong concealment ability. If the cultivators of the 3 clans lay in ambush, they could completely catch Zixian off guard. It was precisely because of this consideration that Lu Yi wanted to drive Fangsuan Mountain over. In this world, only he could do this because he was the master of Fangsuan Mountain. Back then, he drove Fangsuan Mountain's core all the way back from the magic blood demon pupil. Now, although the core had merged with the east, it was still not a problem to drive. However, this matter still needed the support of the human clan. Chen Xianhai nodded and said, "Since you have thought about it, then do as you wish. We will cooperate fully." On the human clan's side, Chen Xianhai had the highest prestige in the Southern Jade Clarity Tower. When he spoke, there was no doubt that he represented the entire human clan. The others would not have any objections. "Thank you, senior brother." After a while, Fengsuan Mountain, which had been lying outside the 9 states for many years, slowly moved. Its speed became faster and faster, heading straight for the Green Lidao world. Before leaving, Lu Yi transmitted a message to Little Nine, asking it to look after the home. Little Nine naturally agreed. The 9 states could be said to be defenseless now. Except for a few dozen constellations that were left behind due to the severe injuries in the previous training, the others had all gathered at Fengsuan Mountain. But now, the 9 states was covered by the Azura Field treasure. As long as Little Nine was there, the 9 states would not be lost. This was also the reason why Lu Yi dared to pull the battlefield outside. He had no worries about the 9 states. In the blink of an eye, Fengsuan Mountain had arrived outside the Green Lidao world. Lu Yi saw the central warship that he brought back from the Wanxiang Sea. There seemed to be a lot of cultivators gathered there. When they met, the central warship also entered Fengsuan Mountain, along with the cultivators who returned from the Wanxiang Sea and the cultivators from the Green Lidao world led by Wuxia. The Green Lidao world's foundation had always been weak. At Yu Yao's level, only Wuxia was there. The others were all constellations. Even so, after understanding the seriousness of this battle, Wuxia still gathered all the constellations in the Green Lidao world to participate. This was a battle that concerned the survival of the galaxy. No one dared to let down their guard. Before Lu Yi arrived with Fengsuan Mountain, Wuxia had no confidence at all. After all, he had heard that Zixian was being led by the 10 Rizhou. How could Yu Kong fight against such an enemy? However, after entering Mount Innerheart, Wuxia was dumbfounded. All he saw were cultivators. There were plenty of constellations, plenty of moon jade, and even more than 20 auras of sunshine. He really couldn't figure out where Lu Yi had found so many helpers. Not only were there humans, but there were also humanoids and spiritlings. There were even the flower race, wood spirit race, and spore race. He even saw the legendary mermaid clan. For a moment, he was dazzled and his horizons were broadened. The flower race and the other 2 races didn't have many people. They had always lived in the flower realm, and the flower realm was attached to the 9 regions. In this battle, the cultivators of the 3 races took the initiative to volunteer, and Lu Yi didn't refuse. Although the cultivators of the 3 races didn't have high cultivation and weren't good at fighting, whether it was the flower race, the wood spirit race, or the spore race, they were all natural-born medical cultivators. Each of them had different methods to heal others. Naturally, they would be useful in a battle of this scale. Lu Ye's orders were to stay in Mount Innerheart and wait for the cultivators on his side to return. If needed, they would help heal others. The cultivators of the 3 races immediately agreed. The allied forces of the 7 races already numbered more than 10,000. They were all at the constellation level and above. This didn't include the cultivators of Yu Conk Realm. The people of Yu Conk Realm hadn't arrived yet. They would need some time, but they should be able to gather here soon. There was no sign of the enemy. Lu Yi didn't wait in place. Instead, he continued to drive Mount Innerheart forward. He only stopped when he was close to the chaotic explosion zone and made arrangements. The route from the Wanxiang Sea to the 9 regions was a dead end. Heiyun only knew this route. Therefore, if Zixian's army attacked, they would definitely be able to stop them near this position. Calculating the time, if Zixian's army really attacked, it shouldn't be too far away. In Mount Innerheart, the cultivators of the various races got along harmoniously. They were familiar with each other and looked for their comrades. Instead, Yan Miao of the mermaid clan found Lu Yi and had a chat with him. "You want to take a drop of blood essence from all the cultivators? Why is that?" Lu Yi looked at Yan Miao in confusion. Yan Miao, however, was mysterious. "You'll know when the time comes. However, it's definitely not a bad thing. This is a secret of our clan." Lu Yi naturally believed that Yan Miao wouldn't do anything bad with the blood essence. After being together for so many years, he still trusted Yen Miao. He immediately nodded and said, "No problem. I'll pass down the order. You just have to collect it." After giving the order, Lu Ye's side took the lead and allowed Yen Miao to take a drop of blood essence. The mermaid clan became busy. All of their clansmen were running around as if they were preparing for something. After waiting for a few more days, the cultivators of the Jade Conch tribe arrived under the leadership of Chou Wu. However, there was still no trace of Zi Xian's beast cultivators. This made Lu Yi wonder if He Yun was bluffing at that time. However, when he thought about it carefully, He Yun didn't need to bluff at all in the situation at that time. Moreover, Zi Xian's army was sent over from a long distance away. It was normal for them to be delayed by some things. Waiting around was not a solution. Lu Yi found Chen Xianhai and Su Yuan and asked them to stay behind and guard the place while he prepared to explore the chaotic explosion zone. With his current cultivation base and the help of the divine patterns, it wasn't difficult for him to hide himself. As long as he was careful, he shouldn't be discovered. Chen Xianhai and Su Yuan naturally didn't have any objections. They only reminded him to be careful. After everything was ready, Lu Yi was about to set off immediately. However, before he could set off, the musical note vibrated. He quickly picked up the musical note and looked at it. After reading the message clearly, he couldn't help but raise his eyebrows. The message was sent by a member of the humanoid clan, Rizhao. He was ordered by Lu Yi to monitor the situation further ahead. Just a moment ago, he made some discoveries. However, this discovery was extremely surprising to Lu Yi. Without any delay, he hurriedly left Fengsuan Mountain and flew forward. Not long after, two figures appeared in front of him. One of them was Rizhao from the dwarf clan who had sent the message, and the other was a charming woman. Lu Yi stood still and waited in place. After a short while, Rizhao and the woman arrived. Lu Yi smiled and saluted, "Senior Sister Qin." The person who came was none other than Qin Yi of the Beixian Galaxy. Beixian was a part of the Four-Way Galaxy. Other than Beixian, there were also Wu Ding, Deluo, and Jingyue galaxies. Because these four galaxies were adjacent to each other and had Rizhao overseeing them, they often interacted with each other. Back then, in the battle between the Four-Way Galaxy and the insect and blood races, Beixian lost a Rizhao called Qinzong, who was Qin Yi's Dao companion. In that battle, Lu Yi, as a constellation, killed the blood race member called Bai Jin, Rizhao, and avenged Qinzong. Qin Yi was very grateful for this. Before Lu Yi left the Four-Way Galaxy, she visited him in the middle of the night and gave him a token and some gifts. The gifts were some spiritual jades and a soul-type secret treasure. Although they were expensive, they weren't rare. However, the token was no small matter. With this token, Lu Yi could mobilize all Beixian cultivators on the Wanxiang Sea. Seeing the token was like seeing Qin Yi herself. This undoubtedly represented Qin Yi's gratitude to Lu Yi. Otherwise, she wouldn't have given him such a token. However, Lu Yi had never used this token. No one knew where he had put it. The past was like smoke. Who would have thought that they would meet again today? Qin Yi looked a little tired. She was a Rizhao, so for her to be like this meant that she didn't stop to rest at all. Moreover, she was rushing at full speed. Otherwise, she wouldn't have looked so tired. "You're really a Rizhao?" Qin Yi looked at Lu Yi in shock. Although she had heard about Lu Ye's recent situation from Rizhao, she still couldn't believe it until she saw it with her own eyes. What was Lu Ye's cultivation level when he left the Four-Way Galaxy? How long had it been since then? "I just leveled up not long ago," Lu Yi replied with a smile. Qin Yi murmured, "Unbelievable." Just like in the past, when she heard that Lu Yi had killed Rizhao with the body of a constellation. Although Rizhao was frozen in place because of the dancer, killing an enemy who was 2 realms above him was indeed shocking. Although it was hard to believe, the truth was right in front of her. Lu Ye's aura and mana waves were indeed at the level of Rizhao. She quickly gathered her thoughts and said, "Lu Yi, I'm here to deliver a message." Lu Yi raised his eyebrows. He had some guesses but still asked, "What's the situation?" Qin Yi said, "Jade Conch is in trouble. You have to leave quickly." Lu Yi looked up at Ri Ri from the dwarf clan. Ri smiled. Just now, when he saw Qin Yi had said the same thing to him. Ri tried to find out the relationship between Qin Yi and Lu Yi, then sent a message to Lu Yi. You guys talk. I'll continue to monitor, he said, then turned around and went back the way he came. Thank you for your trouble, senior brother. Lu Yi called out to his back. You guys seem to have some deployment? Qin Yi frowned. She seemed to have realized something. Although I don't know why Jade Conch has one Rizhao. Even with you and me, it won't be enough. Hurry up and leave. Bring everyone you can bring. If you're late, you'll be in trouble. As far as she knew, Jade Conch shouldn't have Rizhao. Lu Yi leveled up was fine, but the one just now was not a newly promoted Rizhao. He was at least in the middle stage. Hearing her rush, Lu Ye's heart warmed. Just from this point alone, his rescue of the four-way galaxy was not in vain. Qin Yi was undoubtedly fulfilling her promise. She really saw Lu Yi as Beishuan's benefactor, which was why she rushed over to deliver the message. What does senior sister know? Can you tell me? Lu Yi asked. End of chapter. Chapter 2020. Seeing Lu Ye's calm demeanor, Qin Yi was extremely anxious. She glared at him angrily. Do you know that the Zhixian demonic planet wants to harm you? They're on their way and will arrive in a few days. Also, Zhixian has sent 10 demon venerables this time. They're all Rizhao. That's quite a lot. Lu Yi gestured with his hand. Senior sister, please. Let's talk as we walk. Qin Yi looked at him. Why aren't you anxious at all? She didn't expect to meet Lu Yi this time. After all, in her opinion, Lu Yi was still in the Wanxiang Sea. There was no way he would appear in Jade Conch. She thought that after she came to report, the cultivators in Jade Conch would definitely panic. She was even prepared to personally go to the Nine Heavens realm where Lu Yi came from to help the cultivators there evacuate. Although her strength was limited, at least she had to bring Lu Ye's family out of Nine Heavens to avoid this disaster. There's no use being anxious. Lu Yi smiled and led Qin Yi forward. Senior sister, please tell me more. Before this, he actually thought of a possibility. Zhixian's army would definitely pass through the Four Directions galaxy on the way to attack Jade Conch. Back then, Heiyun was alone. He could still conceal himself and pass through the Four Directions galaxy without being discovered. However, it was different this time. With 10 Rizhao's army passing through, it was impossible for the Four Directions galaxy not to notice. From the standpoint of the Four Directions galaxy, they naturally wouldn't welcome such an external force entering their territory. However, the Zhixian demonic planet was too famous. Even if the Four Directions galaxy didn't want to, they probably couldn't stop it. It could even be said that if Zhixian forcefully recruited the cultivators from the Four Directions galaxy to join their army, they wouldn't have much room to resist. They could only endure the humiliation. This was the power of a top force. Ordinary forces couldn't compete with it. If such a situation really happened, then the friendship between Jade Conch and the Four Directions galaxy would come to an end. Even if they were forced to do so. Out of Lu Ye's expectations, Qin Yi came to report first. I really don't know what you're thinking. Qin Yi looked at Lu Yi with disappointment. Even though he had been promoted to Sunshine, in Qin Yi's impression, he was still the same Xingqiu from back then. She vaguely felt that Lu Yi did not understand the situation, so he could only tell her everything. Just as Lu Yi expected, when the Zhixian army crossed the border, the Four Directions star system immediately noticed it, but after learning that the other party was a monster cultivator from the Zhixian demon star, there was nothing they could do. His fist wasn't as big as the other parties. Even though this was his own territory, he couldn't be too forceful. Therefore, with Luo Xinghe, the Realm Lord of Daluo Galaxy, and Jiang Shang, the Realm Lord of Unbounded Galaxy, as the leaders, several Rizhao from the four major galaxies gathered to meet Venerable Purple Jade to gather information. At the very least, they needed to know whether they were just passing by or targeting the four-way star system. The process was not pleasant. Zhixian was powerful, and unless they were from the same top forces, they would look down on anyone. The background of the four-way galaxy was not strong, so of course, they would look down on them. Although the process was unpleasant, Luo Xinghe, Jiang Shang, and the others were relieved that Zixian's target was not the four-way galaxy. However, they soon discovered a new problem because Zixian's target was not the four-way galaxy, but the Jade Conch galaxy where Lu Yi came from. This made Jiang Shang and the others nervous. For a moment, they didn't know what to do. Logically speaking, if Lu Yi hadn't turned the tide in the battle with the insect and blood races, the four-way galaxy would have been in a terrible situation. Even if some of them were lucky enough to survive, they would have to wander the starry sky without a home. Under the Rizhao, they wouldn't be able to resist the insect and blood races of that scale. When the time came, the realm's foundation would be exhausted, and the living beings would be enslaved. Lu Yi had done the four-way galaxy a great favor in that battle. Before Lu Yi left, they had even announced to all the cultivators that Lu Yi was the benefactor of the four-way galaxy and would be their eternal friend. On the Wanxiang Sea, Lu Yi had taken care of the four-way galaxy. Now that they learned that Zixian's target was the Jade Conch galaxy, this news frightened everyone. They didn't know how the Jade Conch galaxy had become enemies with Zixian. The Wanxiang Sea was too far away, and it was inconvenient to transmit information. A lot of information had not been sent back, but it was definitely related to some conflict on the Wanxiang Sea. Otherwise, why would a colossus like Zixian target a remote place like the Jade Conch galaxy? Now, they had to decide how to deal with this matter. The four-way galaxy didn't have the ability and confidence to make an enemy of Zixian. If they left it alone, it would go against their principles. After a simple discussion, they finally came to a decision. The four-way galaxy would host a banquet in the unbounded realm to entertain the Zixian army in the name of being a good host. Qin Yi would take the opportunity to leave in advance and rush to the Jade Conch galaxy to report the news. At the same time, she also had a mission, which was to arrive in the realm of 9 heavens as soon as possible and take away all the people related to Lu Yi. This was the only thing the four-way galaxy could think of and do. They couldn't care about the lives of the people in the Jade Conch galaxy, and they didn't have the ability to do so. If they meddled too much and offended Zixian, the four-way galaxy would suffer. If Zixian could send troops to the Jade Conch galaxy today, she could attack the four-way galaxy another day. Therefore, the only thing they could guarantee was that Lu Ye's family and friends would be safe. This could be considered a small repayment for Lu Ye's great kindness in the past. In order to entertain the Zixian army, the four-way galaxy could be said to have paid a heavy price this time. This was because only by paying enough could they attract the Zixian beast cultivators' interest and make them stay for a while to achieve the goal of stalling for time. We won't be able to delay them for long. In 10 days at most, the Zixian army will definitely attack. Qin Yi's face was full of anxiety. This time, Zixian has 10 demon venerables, all of whom are sunshine. They have an army of over 10,000. I've observed for a while, and among them, Yu Yao alone has nearly 100. Such a force is more than enough to sweep across the four-way galaxy. How can the Jade Conch galaxy stop them? Lu Yi couldn't help but nod. He finally had accurate information about the Zixian army. Previously, he only knew that there were 10 demon venerables, but he didn't know how many beast cultivators there were. Thanks to Qin Yi's report, he was more confident about this battle. Are you listening? Qin Yi looked at him helplessly. I'm listening. As Lu Yi spoke, he raised his hand and waved, and an invisible barrier opened. Senior sister, please come in. Qin Yi looked at the meteorite in front of her, confused for a moment. However, she could vaguely sense a strange aura from the meteorite in front of her, and immediately understood that this meteorite was probably just a disguise. She immediately flashed into it, muttering, "What the hell are you doing?" As soon as she finished speaking, her vision blurred, and a vigorous aura of a realm rushed towards her. This aura was deeper and more profound than any other realm she had encountered before. This is... Qin Yi was stunned. It was indeed as she had thought. The meteorite was just a disguise on the surface, and the truth was that it was actually a realm. A treasure that she had only heard of in legends involuntarily appeared in her mind. It was so similar to what she had just experienced. She blurted out, "What does this have to do with Mount Fengsuan?" Lu Yi smiled and said, Senior sister has good eyesight. This is indeed Mount Fengxin. Impossible. Qin Yi looked at Lu Yi, as if she wanted to see if he was joking. How could the famous Mount Fengxin be here? Moreover, he allowed her to come and go as she pleased, but she didn't see any hint of a joke on Lu Ye's face. Then, she turned her head to look in a certain direction. That direction was where the Immortal Spirit Peak was located. Her expression was solemn, because at this moment, she could feel Ri Zhao's aura from that direction. Not one, not two, not three. Instead, there were many, many of them. Lu Yi, there's a guest? A gentle voice suddenly sounded. Since it's a guest, why don't you invite her over? Lu Yi nodded and called out to Qin Yi, Senior sister Qin, follow me. Qin Yi followed Lu Ye's figure in a daze, flying towards the Immortal Spirit Peak. She suspected that she had sensed wrongly, because even if this was really Mount Fengxin, there couldn't be so many Ri Zhao gathered here. She had heard rumors about the little human tribe, and knew that Mount Fengxin had long been divided. Every part of Mount Fengxin only had a few Ri Zhao. Along the way, she also saw a large number of cultivators gathered together in groups. Most importantly, those cultivators all had different backgrounds. Most of them were humans, but she also saw the gorgeously dressed flower tribe, the tall wood spirit tribe, and a strange tribe with colorful mushrooms on their heads. If she wasn't wrong, they should be the spore tribe. There were also some strange tribes with human bodies and fish tails. The women were beautiful, but the men were ugly and ferocious. Could this be the legendary extinct mermaid tribe? Along the way, Qin Yi only felt that she had entered an extraordinary place. Everything she saw and heard brought a huge impact to her. Finally, she arrived at the peak of the Immortal Spirit Peak. The moment she stepped into the main hall, Qin Yi's hair stood on end. This was because there were more than 20 gazes gathered on both sides, and each gaze seemed to be solid. In front of her, a dignified and plump woman welcomed her, smiling at her. When she met her gaze and felt her aura, Qin Yi immediately made a judgment in her heart. This woman was stronger than her, much stronger. Not only her, but more than half of the 20 people in the main hall had cultivations higher than her. Only a few of them were weaker than her, and the rest were at least on par with her. Where did so many Ri Zhao come from? Qin Yi couldn't understand. Lu Yi, this is? Su Yuqing said softly. Lu Yi hurriedly introduced, this is senior sister Qin Yi from Beixian. This time, she came specially to deliver a message. He then introduced Su Yuqing to Qin Yi. Su Yuqing from the dwarf tribe, junior brother's Dao partner. Senior sister Qin, you don't have to be so formal. Dao partner? Dwarf tribe? Qin Yi's mind was in a mess. This woman whose cultivation far surpassed hers was actually Lu Ye's Dao partner, and she was from the dwarf tribe? Was this really Fengxin Mountain? Suppressing her thoughts, Qin Yi hurriedly greeted Su Yuqing. After a moment, Qin Yi sat down. She still felt that this was unreal, but looking at such a powerful lineup in front of her, the worries and urgency of the past few days were finally swept away. She could see that Lu Yi had already prepared for Zi Xian's attack. Otherwise, why would there be so many Ri Zhao gathered here? Facing such a lineup, Zi Xian, who was completely unaware, rushed in. That scene was pitiful just thinking about it. End of chapter. Chapter 2021. In the main hall, Lu Ye's voice continued to ring out. Everyone was listening attentively. Now that he knew the specific information about Zi Xian and the time they were about to arrive, he naturally needed to make some detailed arrangements. The most important thing in this battle was not Zi Xian's monster cultivators, but the 10 rickshaws. As long as these monster venerables were taken care of, the rest could be won. Qin Yi sat there dizzily, as if she was in a dream. She had a rough idea of what kind of background Jade's snail galaxy had, so she couldn't figure out how Lu Yi had found so many helpers, and they were all from different races. What surprised her even more was that there were many rickshaws in the main hall, and they seemed to follow Lu Ye's lead. She had also heard from the Four Directions Galaxy cultivators who had returned from the Wanxiang Sea that Lu Yi had developed very well there, but she had never expected that the star constellation back then had reached such a level. This was undoubtedly a height that she needed to look up to. After a short while, all the arrangements were in place. Qin Yi slowly came back to her senses. Junior brother Lu, is there anything I can do? If there is, just let me know. Originally, she came here to find Lu Ye's relatives and friends and take them away to take refuge, but the current situation didn't require her to do so. However, since she was already here, she couldn't just watch. She could at least contribute. Lu Yi looked at her. Senior sister Qin, it's enough that you came. The Four Directions Galaxy has paid a great price to delay Zi Xian's army. I, Jade Snail, will remember this kindness. This battle is between our galaxy and Zi Xian, so the Four Directions Galaxy shouldn't interfere. After this battle, Jade Snail Galaxy would definitely become famous in the starry sky, and they would definitely hold a grudge against Zi Xian. Jade Snail now had enough power to protect itself, but it didn't mean that the Four Directions Galaxy had the same. When the time came, Zi Xian wouldn't dare to do anything to Jade Snail, but dealing with the Four Directions Galaxy wouldn't be a problem. Therefore, it was better for Qin Yi not to participate in this battle, lest she invite trouble. Qin Yi sighed. I'm ashamed. The Four Directions Galaxy was afraid of Zi Xian's power. All they could do was delay them for a while and let Qin Yi come over. They didn't dare to fall out with Zi Xian. If they had known that the Jade Conch had such a deep foundation, the Four Cardinal Star System would have had a better choice. For example, they could have sent a group of cultivators to pretend to join Zi Xian's army. When the battle started, they would definitely have been able to catch Zi Xian off guard. But in this world, there was no such thing as early knowledge. Sunshine of the Four Directions Galaxy also had to be responsible for the cultivators in his galaxy. No matter how great Lu Ye's kindness was back then, they did not dare to offend Zi Xian before they had absolute confidence. To be able to think of ways to delay Zi Xian's army and allow Qin Yi to arrive in advance, they had also taken a considerable risk. Seeing her expression, Lu Yi could vaguely guess what she was thinking. She smiled and said, Senior Apprentice Sister Qin, you don't have to worry about it. If Senior Apprentice Sister really can't stay idle, then please take charge of Mount Fengsuan. At that time, there will be many medical cultivators guarding this place. The cultivators who were injured during the war will also return to recuperate. Senior Apprentice Sister, please help look after them. As long as the protective barrier of Fengsuan Mountain was not broken, no one would know that Qin Yi was inside. Qin Yi obviously knew the purpose of Lu Ye's arrangement and immediately nodded. Junior brother Lu, don't worry, I will take good care of them. Lu Yi nodded and said no more. From his point of view, the Four Directions Galaxy's response this time was understandable. Back then, the Four Directions Galaxy was indebted to him. Therefore, this time, when Jade Conch was in trouble, the Four Directions Galaxy sent Qin Yi over to bring Lu Ye's relatives and friends to escape in advance if it was within their capabilities. More than that, the Four Directions Galaxy could not do. Naturally, there would be no misunderstanding because of this. In fact, he was quite grateful because Qin Yi had taken a risk by coming over like this. After the meeting, everyone dispersed. In the remaining time, they made all kinds of preparations for the great battle. And with the accurate information brought by Qin Yi, Lu Yi naturally did not need to explore the chaotic explosion area anymore. Time passed day by day. On this day, several colossal figures suddenly appeared at the exit of the chaotic explosion zone. They were actually huge battleships. There were a total of 5 warships. 4 of them were similar to the central warships that Lu Yi had brought back from the Wanxiang Sea, but they were larger and more ferocious. Anyone who saw them could tell that they were sharp weapons for attacking cities. The last warship was particularly huge. It was a true Sunshine-level warship. Whether it was the attack or defense, it could easily be compared to a Sunshine-level warship. Especially its defense, because it was supported by a powerful formation, it was not comparable to an ordinary Sunshine-level warship. Compared to this warship, the other 4 warships, which were originally not small, were not big. 1 big warship and 4 small warships, 5 warships, passed through the chaotic explosion area and really arrived at Jade Conch Galaxy. We're finally here. In the central control hall of the largest battleship in the middle, 2 figures stood side by side. One of them had a wild beard and a dignified expression, while the other had a solemn aura and a pair of pitch-black eyes, like the darkest night. There were many demon venerables on the purple jade demon star, but there were only 5 who could be called great demon venerables. He Yun was one of them, and there were 4 others. These 2 were 2 of the remaining 4 great demon venerables. The one with the wild beard was Demon Venerable Bai Chen. He had been famous for tens of thousands of years, and could be ranked among the top experts in the entire starry sky. The one with the dark eyes was Demon Venerable Mo Xian. Although he had only been a great demon venerable for 1,000 years, his foundation was extremely deep and could not be underestimated. Especially because of his bloodline, he also cultivated an extremely powerful eye technique, which was mysterious and difficult to guard against. This time, the 2 of them were the leaders of the expedition to the 9 states, and the other 8 little demon venerables assisted them. Even the little demon venerables were sunshine, but their cultivation had not reached the peak of the sunshine level. 10 demon venerables, tens of thousands of demon cultivators. Zi Xian had only used such a lineup twice in 1,000 years, and each time, it was against extremely powerful forces. Under normal circumstances, a Jade Conch galaxy was not worthy of Zi Xian's attention, but things were different when it involved the 9 states. 10,000 years ago, the 9 states was the most famous domain in the entire starry sky. It was so powerful that other top-level domains could not compare to it. It could be said that the glory of the 9 states covered the entire starry sky. However, since the Great War 10,000 years ago, the 9 states had disappeared, and no one knew where it was. Until this time, when He Yun had definite information, Zi Xian immediately sent out a large number of troops. The main reason she brought so many demon cultivators over was to make it easier to rule the 9 states. After all, the 9 states had a huge opportunity, and many people had been looking for it in the past, but unfortunately, they had found nothing. Therefore, it was impossible to find it with fewer people. At this moment, under the activation of the power of the array beside the 2 great demon venerables, pieces of mirror-like objects presented images of their surroundings from different angles in front of them. According to the route given by He Yun, this should be the Jade Conch galaxy, Mo Xian said. The 9 states is not far from here. His doppelganger was lost in the 9 states last time. Bai Chen nodded slightly and said in a low voice, He Yun's doppelganger was refined for 3,000 years, and his cultivation was at the middle stage of the Sunshine Realm. According to him, he suddenly lost contact with his original body. He doesn't know what happened exactly, but the 9 states seems to be pretty good to be able to take care of a middle-stage Sunshine Realm cultivator so easily. Mo Xian smiled. After all, this is the 9 states. Even after 10,000 years, there are always unexpected places. The 2 demon venerables chatted casually, but neither of them took the 9 states seriously. Even if the 9 states had a Sunshine Realm cultivator, how could the 9 states resist them when they attacked with absolute strength? Is there any news from He Yun? Bai Chen asked. Mo Xian said, not at the moment, but He Yun said that he would go to the 10,000 Elephant Sea to take care of the 3-world island. There are many cultivators from the 9 states in that spiritual island. We will take care of it first, and then he will join us later. If there are no accidents, he should be on his way, but we don't know when he will arrive. Should we wait for him? No need. Bai Chen shook his head. Let's continue forward and find the 9 states. Mo Xian understood. Just as he was about to order the fleet to continue forward, his gaze suddenly turned, and he exclaimed in surprise, "Ah!" Bai Chen also looked in that direction. The 2 demon venerables' gazes met, and the nearby starry sky was reflected in a mirror. At this moment, a ball of blood-red light suddenly appeared in that position, and it was rushing towards the fleet at a fast speed. Blood escape technique? Mo Xian raised his eyebrows, looking surprised. It was strange for a cultivator to use the blood escape technique in such a place. Moreover, he didn't see anyone chasing after the cultivator, so Mo Xian didn't know what the cultivator was running away from. What was even more surprising was that the one who used the blood escape technique was actually Sunshine. He's coming for us. Bai Chen narrowed his eyes. Interesting. Mo Xian smiled. Zixian's fleet had just arrived at the Jade Snail Galaxy, and Sunshine was already rushing towards them with the blood escape technique. What was he trying to do? Normally, once a secret technique like the blood escape technique was used, it would consume a lot of energy and burden the cultivator. If it was used for too long, there would even be side effects. Therefore, it was usually used to escape or chase after enemies. While they were talking, a demon venerable from the other warship had already appeared to intercept the cultivator. The cultivator who used the blood escape technique didn't have a high cultivation level. It seemed like he had just broken through not long ago. Therefore, the demon venerable who appeared was at the middle stage of the Sunshine realm. He was one of the 8 lesser demon venerables. He had 2 antlers on his head, and he was a deer demon. He was burly and muscular. He jumped out of the warship and rushed towards the blood-red light, shouting, "Who are you?" He didn't get any response, and the blood-red light rushed towards him even faster. "You're courting death." The deer demon venerable was furious. Demon chi surged around his body, and the shadow of a giant deer flickered behind him. Then his body expanded. He was confident that his cultivation level was higher, so he rushed towards the blood-red light without fear. In that instant, the demon chi shook, and the space exploded. The blood-red light collapsed, revealing the figure behind it. End of chapter. Chapter 2022. At this moment, countless eyes looked over. After the bloody light dissipated, they could vaguely see that it was the face of a young man, but it seemed that he had been provoked by something. His expression was extremely ferocious and terrifying, and without the cover of the bloody light, this young man's body was filled with a layer of black aura, twisting and dancing on his body like a living thing. Even looking at it from afar, the black aura gave off an extremely ominous feeling, as if the blackness was the condensation of the world's filth. It would have been fine if that was all, but the key was the current state of the venerable deer monster. His cultivation was undoubtedly higher than the young man in the blood-red light, but in the collision just now, he didn't gain any advantage at all. Instead, he seemed to be at a disadvantage. His strong body tumbled in the starry sky, and it took him several breaths to stabilize himself. His face was full of surprise, obviously not expecting that he would be sent flying by an opponent whose cultivation was lower than his. It should be known that he did not hold back in the collision just now. The other monster venerables were watching from inside the warship and could not feel it clearly, but when he collided head-on with the enemy, he immediately felt that something was wrong. The other party's state was abnormal. He seemed to have lost his mind, but also did not seem to have. The venerable deer monster had cultivated for so many years, but he had never encountered such a strange thing. Crazy and calm, this extremely contradictory state was undoubtedly the most appropriate to describe the other party. At this moment, there was no time for him to think too much, because after that collision, the young man who looked a little abnormal was once again shrouded in the bloody light, and rushed straight toward the largest warship in the Purple Jade residence, looking aggressive. No one knew what he was going to do, but the venerable deer monster could not ignore it, and immediately moved to intercept him. But this moment of delay had pulled the distance between them by a large margin, and there was no way to intercept him. Fortunately, the warship was not a sitting duck. Seeing the enemy coming, a ray of light immediately erupted from the warship, and the fierceness was comparable to that of Rizhao himself. The bloody light had no choice but to retreat, but was repeatedly blocked by the power of the warship. Seeing that the venerable deer monster was approaching, the bloody light suddenly changed direction and swept toward a warship on the left. Obviously, he had no choice but to change his target. The warship that was targeted immediately counterattacked, but after all, this warship was not as powerful as the largest one, and its attack was not enough to stop the bloody light. In a moment, the bloody light was attached to the surface of the warship. At the same time, the defensive array of the warship was pushed to the limit. The light was so bright that the entire warship seemed to be covered by a bright light curtain. No one knew what the bloody light was trying to do, but being so close to Hikari was undoubtedly the best and most correct way to deal with it. Venerable deer monster roared angrily, wanting to chase the bloody light away. As his magic power fluctuated, A spirit pattern appeared beneath Shui Guang's feet. In the largest battleship, the two demon masters had been paying attention to the movement of the bloody light. When they saw the spiritual inscriptions, both Bai Chen and Emo Xian were stunned. Bai Chen's expression changed. Void spiritual runes. After living for so many years, he also dabbled in the Tao of spiritual tattoos. Although he had no talent in this area, his long life could make up for many shortcomings. Therefore, he could tell at a glance that this was an extremely complicated void spiritual tattoo. Not good. Emo Xian also exclaimed in a low voice. He hurriedly transmitted his voice to Venerable Deer Monster, who was rapidly approaching the bloody light. Retreat quickly. Although he did not know why Hikari suddenly constructed such a void spiritual tattoo was generally related to transmission and shifting. Almost at the same time as his voice fell, the spiritual inscriptions trembled slightly. The next moment, figures suddenly appeared beside Shui Guang. Every figure was almost the same as Shui Guang. They were shrouded in blood and their faces could not be seen clearly. However, they gave off an extremely manic feeling. There were a total of 8 bloody lights transmitted through the void spiritual tattoo. Including the first one, there were 9 of them. These 9 bloody lights were all filled with Hikari's aura and seemed to come from the same source. As soon as they appeared, they hurriedly scattered in all directions. At the same time, on a distant meteorite, Lu Yi stood quietly in place. He restrained his aura and looked in the direction of the Zixuan fleet. The 9 bloody shadows were none other than his 9 treasured blood doppelgangers. However, these 9 treasured blood doppelgangers were not the same as ordinary treasured blood doppelgangers, because each of them carried a part of the black fruit of the talent tree. Previously, in the 10,000 Elephant Sea, Lu Yi had been trying to remove the black fruit of the talent tree. After some experiments, the talent tree doppelgangers could take away half of the black fruit. However, the talent tree doppelgangers could not give up, so this method was meaningless. Then he thought of the treasured blood doppelgangers. Since the talent tree doppelgangers could divide the black fruit, there was no reason why the treasured blood doppelgangers could not. The initial attempt was not satisfactory, but with Lu Ye's efforts and persistence, he finally had results. The treasured blood in his body could absorb a part of the essence of the black fruit and carry it in it. In this way, as long as he gave up the treasured blood doppelgangers, he could remove the black fruit bit by bit. Before returning to the 9 regions, he had prepared 9 drops of treasured blood, all of which carried a part of the essence of the black fruit. At that time, he did not give up the 9 drops of treasured blood because after giving them up, he would have to condense them again, which would take time and energy. He had been preparing to make use of them at this time. After all, they were 9 treasured blood doppelgangers, which could play a big role in the right place. For example, at this moment, his initial goal was the largest battleship. This thing was too powerful, so of course, he had to get rid of it first. If he had enough time, it would not be a problem for the treasured blood doppelgangers to get close to the largest battleship, but there was a little problem with his plan. Lu Yi did not expect that after absorbing a part of the essence of the black fruit, his treasured blood doppelgangers would have some subtle changes. After these doppelgangers were condensed, they seemed to have their own thoughts and ideas. This was incredible. The treasured blood doppelgangers were condensed from his treasured blood, so they were a part of him. Logically speaking, he could easily control them, just like moving his 10 fingers. But now, the situation was that his fingers had their own thoughts, and this situation was becoming more and more obvious as time went by. Lu Yi only thought for a moment, and then he knew what was going on. The black fruit was the condensation of the 7 emotions and 6 desires of the cultivators he had devoured. When the treasured blood doppelgangers absorbed these things, it was equivalent to the thoughts of those dead cultivators being revived in his treasured blood doppelgangers. Lu Yi did not know if there would be a day when the dead Yuan Du, Gu Shi, Qin Xuanba, and the others would be revived with the help of his treasured blood doppelgangers. Probably not. After all, the dead could not be revived. Even if the treasured blood doppelgangers were revived, there was a high probability that they would only become a strange existence that only knew how to kill and destroy. The problem now was that, under the influence of the essence of the black fruit, Lu Ye's control of the treasured blood doppelgangers would weaken over time. He did not expect such a thing to happen. After all, this was the first time he had condensed a treasured blood doppelgangers that had absorbed the essence of the black fruit. There was a little deviation in the plan, but it was not a big deal. Lu Yi stared ahead and said softly, "Explode." The moment his words fell, the 9 scattered treasured blood doppelgangers emitted extremely terrifying energy fluctuations one after another. The bloody light suddenly shone brightly and quickly spread out in all directions, enveloping a large area of the starry sky. Lu Yi looked at it from afar and sighed. The 9 treasured blood doppelgangers were somewhat resistant to his orders, so they did not explode together. The damage caused was obviously reduced. If the 9 treasured blood doppelgangers could explode at the same time, the damage caused would be several times stronger. The bloody light filled the air and did not dissipate for a long time. Several figures rushed out in a sorry state, including Monster Venerable Deer. In addition to him, there were 2 other Monster Venerables. All of them were covered in dust and were obviously injured. The bloody light gradually dissipated, revealing the scene of that space. Of the 5 purple jade battleships, only 4 were left. The smaller one had been turned into countless fragments. It was the one that the treasured blood doppelgangers had attached themselves to. Of the purple jade beast cultivators in the battleship, except for the 2 monster venerables who managed to escape with their lives, the others, including Yu Yao and Xingxiu, were all dead. The self-destruction of 9 sunshine doppelgangers. Even if the power was greatly reduced due to some accidents, it was still not something that ordinary cultivators could withstand. Even if the battleship pushed its defensive power to the limit, it was still easily torn apart. When the 3 monster venerables appeared, they hurriedly approached the largest battleship on their side, panicking as if they had seen a ghost. Although the other 3 smaller battleships were not destroyed, they were more or less affected and were damaged. In the central control hall of the largest battleship, Bai Chen and Mo Xian's eyelids twitched. They had just witnessed a shocking scene with their own eyes. Even though they had lived for countless years, they still could not believe their eyes. Blood explosion technique, Bai Chen said in a deep voice. He recognized that it was the Blood Clan's blood explosion technique. It was a secret technique used by the Blood Clan to perish together with the enemy. "What's going on?" Mo Xian exclaimed. They had just arrived at the Jade Conch Galaxy. It was one thing for 9 sunshine doppelgangers to appear out of nowhere, but why did they use the blood explosion technique without saying a word? What was going on? That was sunshine, and there were 9 of them in one go. Isn't this the Jade Conch Galaxy? Isn't this the Blood Clan's headquarters? Mo Xian had a belly full of questions that he could not get an answer to. Taking a step back, even if this was really the main camp of the blood breeds, there was no other blood breeds who had the courage to make the 9 Rikashi self-destruct to intercept Zi Xian's fleet. What kind of enmity did they have? Why did they have to make such a big move? Sunshine doppelgangers were a mainstay wherever he went. Who would have such a strong foundation to send 9 sunshine doppelgangers to intercept Zi Xian's fleet? It could be said that the 9 sunshine doppelgangers' self-destruction had stunned Zi Xian's fleet. Not only Zi Xian, but even Sunshine Doppelganger, who was observing the scene from inside the Heart Mountain, was stunned. Lu Yi had said that he would take the lead, and no one had any objections. After all, this was Jade Conch Galaxy's matter. It was natural for Lu Yi to take the lead. But how did he take the lead? It was 9 sunshine doppelgangers, and they were all gone after setting off such a huge blood-colored firework. This was the first time in history. End of chapter. Chapter 2023. Inside Mount Minuscule, the Rizhao cultivators were both shocked and bewildered. They were shocked by Lu Ye's generosity, but they were also bewildered by what kind of technique was this, and what were the 9 Rizhao cultivators doing. Before this, Lu Yi had never mentioned this to them. "It's our turn." Chen Xuanhai's voice interrupted everyone's thoughts. According to the plan, after Lu Yi took the lead, it would be their turn. Therefore, even though the scene just now was shocking, it didn't give them much time to think. "Are you ready?" Chen Xianhai turned to look at the Rizhao cultivators beside him. Su Yuan smiled and pounced toward him, instantly fusing into his body and disappearing. Without a doubt, he had used the soul race's unique soul possession technique. The other soul race cultivators pounced on their chosen targets one after another. The miniature race had sent out 11 Rizhao cultivators, and the soul race had sent out 11 as well. They had already discussed and decided on who to join forces with. 22 Rizhao cultivators were reduced to 11 in an instant. However, no matter who they were, their auras skyrocketed at this moment. Each of them focused their senses and sensed for a moment before revealing an excited expression. The miniature race had heard of the soul race's mysteries, but this was the first time they had personally experienced the great improvement brought about by the soul race's soul possession technique. In an instant, their auras were like dragons, and their killing intent was dense. "Let's go!" Chen Xianhai shouted and took the lead to fly into the sky. The others followed closely behind. At the same time, where the allied forces were gathered, many soul race cultivators of the lunar jade level also used soul possession techniques and pounced on their chosen targets. In the blink of an eye, not a single soul race cultivator could be seen on Mount Minuscule. The allied forces' numbers were also reduced by half. Although their numbers were reduced, their overall strength had increased. Outside Mount Minuscule, the dazzling bloody light had already receded. The attacking purple jade beast cultivators all had lingering fears, especially Venerable Stag and the other two who had just escaped. They could sense that the 9 blood race cultivators' blood explosion technique wasn't coordinated enough. Otherwise, the 3 of them might not have survived. Now that they had luckily escaped with their lives, they were all still fearful. "Demon Lord, there is a large amount of sunshine aura emerging." Suddenly, a voice sounded urgently. Apparently, the detection array of the warship had detected the changes in the outside world. Demon Venerable by Chen, who was still immersed in the incident just now, hurriedly turned his head to look in a certain direction. In that direction, in the reflection of a mirror, more than 10 figures suddenly appeared and charged straight towards them. Even in the warship, he could clearly sense the powerful aura of these people, especially the leader, who even gave him, a great demon venerable, a sense of threat. His aura was panicked, and his aura was majestic. Where did all this sunlight come from? Venerable Deer, who had just escaped here, was dumbfounded. He didn't even have time to catch his breath. One had to know that He Yun had provided them with information that the Jade Conch Galaxy did not have a single sunshine. Of course, He Yun's clone had been lost here, so this information was definitely wrong. That was why they had sent 10 demon venerables here. They thought that even if there was a hidden force in the Jade Snail Galaxy, they could easily deal with it. However, as soon as they arrived, they were attacked by 9 Sunshine of the Blood Clan. Then, more than 10 Sunshine of the Blood Clan appeared out of nowhere and attacked them aggressively. This was definitely not the Jade Conch Galaxy. They must have accidentally broken into some big galaxy. There was no time to think. Seeing that the group of Sunshine was getting closer and closer, Bai Chen immediately made a decision. Meet the enemy. They couldn't let the enemy get close to their warship. The aftermath of the battle between the Sunshine was too fierce. If the enemy really got close and started fighting, their demon cultivators would definitely suffer heavy losses. Therefore, they had to stop the enemy outside. At his command, he took the lead and rushed out. The other demon venerables followed closely behind. On the other 3 warships, demon venerables appeared and quickly gathered. The 10 demon venerables gathered together, their demon chi surging. From afar, it seemed like there was a huge cloud in the starry sky. Fellow cultivators, we are from the Zishuan Demon Star. I am Bai Chen, and I happen to pass by here. Is there a misunderstanding? In Bai Chen's mind, this must be a big galaxy that they didn't know about. Moreover, the enemy's lineup was so solid that he didn't want to start a fight with them. It would be best if he could clear up the misunderstanding. As he spoke, he even mentioned the Zishuan Demon Star and his name. He thought that it would be more or less effective. The Zishuan Demon Star was an existence that couldn't be trifled with. Unexpectedly, the Sunshine of the opposite side turned a deaf ear to his words. Instead, their fighting spirit was even higher. Bai Chen couldn't help but be annoyed. But things had already come to this point, and there was no way to ease the situation, especially when the enemy had already lost 9 sunshine. After a few breaths, the sunshine of the enemy and his side collided. In an instant, surging magic power surged in all directions, and pure soul power bombarded the 4 poles. The vast expanse of the starry sky suddenly distorted at this moment. Impossible! Bai Chen's eyes narrowed. The magic power that protected him showed signs of collapsing at this moment. He was a great demon venerable who had cultivated for tens of thousands of years. Even if there were people in the entire starry sky who were stronger than him, there was a limit to their strength. Moreover, the number of such strong people couldn't be more than 5. This was also the reason why he dared to lead the demon venerables to fight the enemy. It was because he had enough confidence in his own strength. But in that moment of contact, this confidence that he had maintained for tens of thousands of years was almost shattered. His opponent was a middle-aged man who held an illusory sword in his hand. In that instant of contact, he actually had a long-lost feeling that he was no match for his opponent. His opponent's magic power was more than a level higher than his own. He was already at the peak of the Sunshine Realm, and his magic power had been cultivated to the peak of the starry sky. How could there be someone stronger than him? But this kind of inconceivable thing happened so strangely. Not only him, but the other demon venerables also encountered the same thing. As a result, the 2 Rihoku groups that were originally colliding fiercely with each other were immediately divided into 2 groups the moment they collided. After a short stalemate, all the demon venerables retreated in a panic. It could be said that they retreated as fast as they could. Bai Chen's heart was in turmoil. They were the Purple Jade demon venerables, and each of them was powerful. In the process of growth, they could fight against people who were above their level. When facing cultivators who were not from the top realms and were of the same level of cultivation, they were the ones who could suppress others. They had never experienced such a ridiculous encounter. For the first time in their lives, they were suppressed by an enemy of the same level of cultivation. Moreover, these enemies' fighting style was extremely unique. Talismans were thrown out one after another as if they were worthless. Each talisman was extremely powerful. They could be turned into spells, strengthen themselves, or weaken the enemy. They were endless. Bai Chen was shocked. He finally knew where these Sunshine Realm cultivators came from. You are from the Hominid clan? In this world, only the Hominid clan cultivators fought with talismans because talismans were the foundation of their cultivation. But how could they be from the Hominid clan? Purple Jade had never had any enmity with the Hominid clan, so he could not understand why these Sunshine Realm cultivators from the Hominid clan would intercept the Purple Jade army in this place. We can't retreat. Emo Xian's voice suddenly came into his ears. Bai Chen was shocked and suddenly reacted. They left the fleet to face the enemy. Their main purpose was to prevent the aftermath of the battle between Rizhao and the other Yao cultivators. If they continued to retreat, there would be no point in taking the initiative to face the enemy, because they would soon retreat to the area where the 4 battleships were. They could not retreat, but the enemy was too strong. They could not suppress them, so they could only lead them. Bai Chen's divine thoughts moved, and the demon venerables immediately understood and cooperated. In the next moment, the 2 sides glided in an arc and swept obliquely upward, avoiding the Purple Jade warships behind them. Bai Chen frowned because he found that the Sunshine Realm cultivators of the Hominid clan did not seem to reject their lead. Instead, they seemed to be going with the flow. Why was that? Soon he knew the reason. It was because in the direction where the Sunshine Realm cultivators of the Hominid clan appeared, there was an army of cultivators. At first glance, there were about 6 or 7,000 of them. A group of Tiger Shark warships cleared the way, and behind the Tiger Shark warships, many cultivators gathered in groups and moved forward. Behind this army of cultivators, there was a central warship across the starry sky. On the deck, many figures were busy, but no one knew what they were doing. So that was it. Bai Chen immediately understood. No matter why the Hominid clan wanted to make things difficult for them, just by looking at the situation in front of him, he knew that the enemy came prepared. This was a battle of soldiers against soldiers, and generals against generals, so the Sunshine Realm cultivators of the hominid clan did not reject their lead. In other words, it was the intention of both sides to divide the battlefield in the Sunshine Realm. The enemy had 6,000 or 7,000 hominid clan cultivators, and under the premise of losing a warship, they had at least 8,000 hominid clan cultivators. In terms of numbers, they had a slight advantage, and they still had 4 warships at their disposal. Bai Chen withdrew his gaze and no longer paid attention to them, because in his opinion, it was impossible for Purple Jade to lose the battle under the Sunshine Realm. Now they had to face the problem of how to deal with the Sunshine Realm cultivators of the hominid clan. The initial chaos had passed, and now the Sunshine Realm cultivators of both sides were fighting in pairs. Although the hominid clan had one more Sunshine Realm cultivator and had the advantage in every battle, it would still take some time to turn this advantage into a victory. On a distant meteorite, Lu Yi stood up and smiled slightly. "It's our turn." The trend of the battle developed as expected. At present, soldiers were fighting soldiers and generals were fighting generals, but Purple Jade had 4 warships to rely on, which was undoubtedly unfair to the Jade Conch Coalition army. His task was very simple, which was to erase this unfairness and let his coalition army have a fair fight with the Purple Jade demonic clan cultivators. End of chapter. Chapter 2024. As he spoke, Lu Yi examined the situation of his talent tree. After the 9 treasured blood clones that carried a portion of the black fruit's essence self-destructed, he felt much more relaxed. When he looked inside himself, he could see that the black fruit was still there, but it was obviously smaller. In comparison, it was about 30% smaller. If the 9 treasured blood clones could reduce the black fruit's essence by 30%, then the 30 treasured blood clones should be able to completely remove the black fruit. This matter was not urgent for the time being. He would think about it when he had the time. After all, condensing treasured blood clones required time and energy. Gathering his thoughts, Lu Yi turned his head to the side. "Come." Beside him was a huge white tiger. It was Hoopa. Beside Hoopa were a few Soul Clan cultivators led by Yi. Most of these Soul Clan cultivators had extraordinary talent. They were the accompanying spirits that Hoopa had recently taken in at the Soul Clan's ancestral land. Li Shang was one of them. To the Spiritas, it was a great honor to be valued by a sacred beast and turned into a companion spirit. This was because their cultivation efficiency would be greatly improved. Ever since Hoopa had entered the Spiritas' ancestral land, countless Spiritas had wanted to get close to him and get a chance to be turned. Unfortunately, Hoopa had no interest in them. To him, Yi was enough. Later on, Yi and Hoopa had a long talk. Only then did Hoopa reluctantly choose a few Spiritas. Li Shang was close to him, so he had undoubtedly obtained this opportunity. Now, including Yi and Li Shang, Hoopa had a total of 6 companion spirits. They were all women, and all of them had the same cultivation base as Yu Yao. The strongest one was already at the late stage Yu Yao. Of course, Yu Yao of the Spiritas were different from ordinary Yu Yao. They mainly cultivated soul power and did not have transcendence energy. However, because of this, they had some methods that other races could not imagine. For example, at this moment. As Lu Ye's voice fell, Yi and the others pounced into Hoopa's body and disappeared. Hoopa roared and charged toward Lu Yi. His body quickly turned from solid to illusory, and in an instant, he became a shadow and merged with Lu Yi. In the next moment, Lu Yi felt his foundation increase significantly. Even without activating his transcendence energy or blood essence, there was an endless stream of energy surging out of his body. "I can finally be of help." Yi's voice rang out in Lu Ye's mind. Her voice was filled with joy and anticipation. She and Lu Yi had known each other for a long time and had gone through thick and thin together. They had long since considered each other as family. However, apart from the very beginning when Yi and Hoopa were able to help Lu Yi, as his strength grew, the spirit and tiger duo found it difficult to help him anymore. Back then, Yi had insisted on following Li Shang to the Spiritas' ancestral land because she knew that if she didn't think of a way to change things, the distance between her and Lu Yi would only grow further and further apart. Even if their relationship didn't become estranged, that wasn't what she wanted. She didn't want Lu Yi to fight with the enemy while she could only watch from afar. Going to the soul race's ancestral land and cultivating the soul race's secret arts was her chance. Until today, the yearning and sadness of being separated for so many years finally paid off. She no longer had to watch Lu Yi struggle to kill the enemy from afar and feel powerless. She could also do her part. Li Shang's voice rang out. We're fighting side by side again. How nostalgic. This wasn't the first time she had possessed Lu Ye's soul. She had done this several times before, but at that time, she and Lu Yi had both been constellations. Now, one was Yu Yao and the other was Ri Zhao. The difference in their cultivation levels was like the difference between heaven and earth. Several other voices also rang out. Senior brother Lu, please take care of me. Of course, of course. Lu Yi smiled. He sensed his current state. Compared to his normal state, his strength had increased by about 20%. This wasn't too great of an increase, and it was far inferior to the effects of Ri Zhao's soul possession. However, considering that this was the result of Yu Yao possessing him, it was already quite impressive. It had to be known that he was now Ri Zhao. And this special soul possession state could only be achieved through Hu Pe, the Spirita's holy beast, as a medium. The white tiger had become the Spirita's holy beast not only because it could increase the cultivation efficiency of the chosen Spiritas, but also because of this special soul possession technique. Under normal circumstances, a living being could only be possessed by one Spiritus. It was impossible for there to be a second one, because that would result in intense conflict. However, if Hu Pe was used as a medium, there wouldn't be this problem. Holy beasts had the ability to coordinate all the Spiritas under their command. They could integrate them and enhance one's body. 6 Yu Yao Spiritas and Hu Pe had increased Lu Ye's strength by 20%. This was the result of this special soul possession. Moreover, this wasn't Hu Pe's limit. According to Yi, when Hu Pe's strength increased in the future, he could transform even more Spiritas. And once Yi and the others' cultivation levels increased to Ri Zhao, when they used soul possession, the increase in strength would be unimaginable. Lu Yi even suspected that there wasn't anyone in this world who could withstand such a terrifying increase in strength. After familiarizing himself with his current state, Lu Yi said, "Let's go." As soon as he finished speaking, he turned into a ray of blood-red light and rushed toward Zixian's 4 battleships. At this moment, the 4 battleships were preparing to meet the enemy. Light flowed on the surface of the battleships. Clearly, they had activated their defensive power. In various positions, the arrays hummed as the power of the Dharma treasures placed in the array cores rapidly accumulated. Battleships like this took a long time to accumulate power, but once they were activated, their power was extremely strong. Not to mention the largest battleship, the power it released was equivalent to Ri Zhao personally attacking. Even the 3 smaller battleships were equivalent to Yu Yao's full-strength attack at her peak. If they were really allowed to attack, the Jade Conch Alliance would definitely suffer great losses. Unfortunately, they didn't have the chance. No one expected that Ri Zhao, who was rich, would still target their battleships when the Jade Conch Alliance had sent out 11 Ri Zhao to meet the enemy. Taking a step back, even if Bai Chen and the other demon venerables thought of this, they wouldn't be able to solve this problem because they had no time to spare. What's that? In the outermost battleship, a cultivator who was monitoring the situation outside suddenly discovered something strange in the cabin where the central array was located. He focused his attention and checked, then turned pale with fright. Oh no, Ri Zhao is attacking. Dodge! We can't. He's too fast. They were already accumulating power to launch an attack on the Jade Conch Alliance. Now that they discovered something, how could they dodge? Adjust the array. Abandon the attack and increase the defense. Yu Yao, who was overseeing the battle, hurriedly ordered. A battleship's defense was always stronger than its attack, so even if Ri Zhao attacked, the battleship might still have a chance to defend. As long as they resisted for a while, the largest purple jade battleship would be able to detect the situation here. At that time, they would be able to restrain Ri Zhao. Then, they could act according to the situation. In the starry sky, it wasn't unheard of for fleets to work together and kill Ri Zhao. Following Yu Yao's order, the battleship's accumulated power quickly dispersed. The protective film on the surface of the battleship suddenly became dazzling. It was obvious that all of its power was focused on defense. In an instant, the battleship seemed to have turned into a small sun, illuminating the vast starry sky. Under the illumination of the light, a blood-red light brazenly broke in. Although it was inconspicuous, it was a stark contrast to the dazzling light. Almost all of the purple jade cultivators on the battleship heard the clang of a long saber being unsheathed. The blood-red light rapidly expanded and turned into a blood-red color. As the blood-red and white light clashed, the sound of a saber rang out again. A huge saber suddenly appeared in the void, as if it was being grasped by an invisible hand and slowly swung down. Giant saber slash. This was an inherited saber technique from the Fong blade. It was undoubtedly a good choice to destroy a battleship. Watching from afar, the visual impact of this scene was indescribable. The huge saber seemed to be able to split heaven and earth. When it gently swung down, the bright defense of the battleship only lasted for an instant before it shattered, turning into specks of light that scattered in all directions. The huge battleship was also split into two by the saber. The saber aura swept out, and countless Yao cultivators were reduced to ashes at this moment. Whether it was Xingxiu or Yu Yao, they were no different in the face of this destructive saber. More Yao cultivators escaped from the broken battleship, each of them looking terrified and uneasy. Lu Yi had already swept past this battleship and rushed to the second one. However, before he arrived, he was shocked to find that countless Yao cultivators on the battleship had abandoned the ship and fled. Obviously, the scene just now had frightened them. Since it was not safe to hide in the battleship, who would dare to continue hiding? Of course, fleeing for their lives was the most important thing. Not only this battleship, but the other one as well. In the blink of an eye, one of the three battleships was destroyed, and the other two were completely abandoned. Only the largest battleship was left unscathed. This was a Rizhao-class battleship, and it had the capital to be proud. Even in a top realm like Purple Jade, there were only a few battleships of this level, and they had always been used only in large-scale wars. At this moment, although there was no Rizhao in the battleship, it could still exert a powerful force with its own performance. When Lu Yi was flying, the other side had already launched an attack at him. As expected, the power was indeed comparable to Rizhao's personal attack. Lu Yi displayed the vertical sweep technique, constantly approaching the battleship while dodging the other party's attack. In less than 10 breaths, he was in front of the battleship. The long saber hummed and was raised high. His vigorous qi, blood, and magic power were activated, and the huge saber blade quickly condensed. Just like before, the huge saber slashed down with the power to split the stars and slash the moon. The huge saber fell, and the battleship shook. However, this fierce attack did not break the battleship, and it did not even destroy its defense. End of chapter. Chapter 2025. One must know that even though Lu Yi had just advanced to the Sunshine Realm, his foundation was deep. His true strength was not something an ordinary Sunshine Realm cultivator could compare to. Furthermore, Hoopa had integrated the souls of the 6 spiritlings, increasing his strength by 20%. In such a state, even if there was a late-stage Sunshine Realm cultivator in front of him, Lu Yi was confident that he could fight. However, Zixian's largest warship was able to block such an attack. This undoubtedly meant that the warship's defensive strength was at the late-stage Sunshine Realm. And this was not its limit. Because it still had the strength to attack, almost at the same time as Lu Ye's giant blade slashed down, the largest warship hummed and a thick beam of light suddenly erupted from the front of the warship. In an instant, it broke through the limit of distance and attacked directly into the distance. And that direction was where the Jade Conch cultivator's allied army was located. Lu Yi suddenly turned his head and looked. His heart couldn't help but be in his throat. He was right next to the warship and could clearly feel the terrifying power contained in the beam of light. It was definitely not something a Sunshine Realm cultivator could withstand. If such an attack really landed in the midst of the Jade Conch cultivators, it would cause countless casualties in an instant. Fortunately, at this critical moment, A tall figure stood out from the bustling crowd. It was Wuxia. There were quite a few sunshine cultivators on their side this time, but the Spiritling Sunshine had already been possessed by the Spiritling Sunshine and were locked in a fierce battle with the demon venerables. The only ones left were the three people who rushed back from the three-world island. Among them, Lu Ye's task was to deal with Zi Xian's warships. Yen Miao had another important task and would not directly participate in the battle this time. The last remaining Wuxia hid in the crowd of cultivators and attacked with the thousands of troops. Under the premise that the number of cultivators and overall strength of both sides were almost the same, with Sunshine in charge, they would naturally have the absolute advantage in the following confrontation. She didn't want to be exposed so quickly, but now she had no choice but to stand out. Under the ferocious urging of Rizhao's mana, Wuxia's entire body emitted a bright light. She raised her hand and a small bell-like protective magic weapon was summoned. It spun above her head, and with the surge of mana, the small bell suddenly turned into a shadow. It expanded with a loud bang and covered her entire body, as well as a large area. It happened to block the attack of the bright beam of light. In the next moment, the battleship's attack bombarded the bell shadow. The thick white light was like a white lightning bolt, containing the power to destroy the heaven and earth. In just 2 breaths, the bell shadow shattered and Wuxia was sent flying, blood spurting out of her body. Even though she had activated her defensive magic treasure, she was still injured by the attack. Fortunately, she was able to block the attack. Lu Yi saw this scene from afar and flew into a rage. Fortunately, there were enough sunshine on their side, and Wuxia was placed among the cultivators in advance. Otherwise, who knows how many people would have suffered under this attack. Sure enough, no one could predict the future in a battle of this level. There would always be accidents in the process of battle. Wuxia's life was not in danger. Lu Yi could sense that her aura was just a little weak. Seeing that the battleships around him were preparing to attack again, he didn't hesitate anymore. He raised his hand and grabbed the void, summoning the sword gourd. With his current strength, he had a chance to destroy this battleship, but that would take time. What they lacked the most right now was time. They might not be able to block such an attack. He could only summon the sword gourd. Channeling his magic power and spiritual sense, a sword light flew out from the mouth of the sword gourd. Following the guidance of Lu Ye's spiritual sense, it pierced towards the battleship beside him. Compared to the size of the battleship, this sword light was like an embroidery needle. However, the battleship's defense that could block his giant blade slash was as fragile as paper in front of this needle-like sword chi. The not-so-bright sword light easily broke through the battleship's defense, penetrated the battleship, and then came out the other side of the battleship. The light shattered, and the dazzling defense on the battleship's surface turned into fluorescent light dancing in the air. In an instant, it was as if a group of fireflies had appeared in the starry sky. Lu Yi raised the Panshan saber in his hand again. Channeling his magic power, an even larger blade quickly condensed and slashed down. Silently, the battleship without any protection could no longer resist this slash. It followed in the footsteps of the first battleship, breaking into 2 halves. At the same time, under the sweep of the saber light, many lives were annihilated. Even more Yao cultivators fled in fear, their faces ashen. Kill! In the starry sky ahead, the cultivators of Yu Luo shouted. Countless cultivators got into formation, gathering boundless killing intent, and swept towards the battleship like a fierce wave. The Yao cultivators were in a mess. The fleet of 5 battleships could no longer be their trump card. Moreover, the battle had started too hastily. Even the Yao cultivators were not prepared, let alone the Yao cultivators. Lu Ye's figure flashed, and the saber light swept across, killing wantonly. It could be said that the Yao cultivators were already in a disadvantageous position before the battle had even begun. On the other side, the Yao cultivators of Sunshine were in a battle. Each of the Yao cultivators was extremely sullen. This was because none of them had the upper hand in any of the 10 battles. They were all in a state of being suppressed. This was unimaginable. They were all sunshine cultivators from the Zishuan demon planet. At the same level of cultivation, their foundation was stronger than the average sunshine cultivator. They had always been the ones suppressing others. Since when were they the ones being suppressed? Especially Mo Xian, a great Yao cultivator. His opponent was Su Yuqing. He could feel that his opponent was also at the peak of the sunshine realm. But she was from the hominid clan. How could she suppress him? As everyone knew, due to the special physique of the hominin clan and the fact that they cultivated the way of spiritual talismans, their ability to fight head-on was often slightly weaker than other clans. They relied more on the spiritual talismans that they refined themselves, so they had many means to fight, but their ability to fight head-on was not enough. Not to mention a large race like the Yao cultivators. Under normal circumstances, in a battle between Mo Xian and Su Yuqing, the latter would definitely be at a disadvantage. But now, the situation was reversed. Mo Xian could not accept this. The battle had just begun, and the situation was already like this. If this continued, wouldn't it mean that all the Yao cultivators of the Yao cultivators would be defeated? The hominid clan. Just the hominid clan. Mo Xian was enraged. Losing the battle made him feel like he was being humiliated for no reason. It would be fine if he lost to the Sunshine tribe, but losing to the hominid tribe was something he could not accept. He was filled with murderous intent. He swore to himself that no matter what price he had to pay, he would kill all the hominid clan. But at this moment, a dong sound came from somewhere in the starry sky. Sound could not be transmitted in the starry sky. Cultivators could only communicate through telepathy or mana. But this sound was extremely clear. It was transmitted into the ears of all the cultivators in the starry sky. It was transmitted into the ears of all the cultivators in the starry sky who were launching attacks or organizing defenses. And everyone could tell that it was the sound of a drum. Mo Xian did not know where the sound came from, but he did not have the time to care about it. His mind was focused on Su Yuqing. He wanted to tear this reckless hominid clan girl into pieces and let her know the tragic fate of those who dared to oppose him. Not only Mo Xian, but the other Yao cultivators as well. Only the hominid clan Sunshine had a thought. It's here. Near the battleship that was cut in two, Lu Yi was filled with murderous intent. He glanced at the location of Mount Fengxin. In that direction, a central battleship lay outside Mount Fengxin, maintaining a posture that could retreat into Mount Fengxin at any time. This central battleship was the one that Lu Yi brought back from the Wanxiang Sea. Its size was almost the same as the 4 smaller battleships that Zi Xian dispatched this time. They were all of the same grade. At this moment, on the deck of the battleship, several figures stood. There were not many of them, only less than 200. They were all women. Some looked no different from humans, while others had a human body and a fishtail. These were the female cultivators of the mermaid clan. The leader was Great Elder Yan Miao. Today, she was dressed in tight-fitting clothes that outlined her graceful figure. Her long hair was tied up high, making her look valiant and formidable. There was a big drum in front of her. The big drum had a radius of 30 feet and was entirely jade-colored. Only the drum's surface was light red. There were complicated and ancient patterns on the drum's surface that crisscrossed with each other, giving off a sense of time. She held 2 drumsticks in her hands. One of them fell on the drum's surface, while the other was raised high. The sound of the drum just now was obviously from her. Behind her, there were 4 other mermaid clan cultivators lined up in a row. They were the 3 elders of the mermaid clan and the princess, Bai Lu. Among the higher-ups of the mermaid clan, there was only 1 elder left to guard the territory except for the ignorant queen. The rest were all here. There were also big drums in front of the 3 elders and Bai Lu, but compared to the one in front of Yan Miao, their drums were undoubtedly much smaller. Even so, they were comparable to a table. 1 big drum and 4 small ones. There were 5 drums, all of which were extremely ancient. These 5 drums were extraordinary. Lu Yi had some understanding of them before. He knew that these 5 drums were a clan weapon that had been passed down since ancient times. They were extremely precious. As for what these 5 drums could do, Yan Miao didn't go into detail. He only told Lu Yi that there would be a pleasant surprise when the time came. Behind the 5 drums were the female cultivators of the mermaid clan. They were arranged in a semicircle on the deck. Each of them had their hands tightly clasped in front of their chests. Their heads were slightly bowed and their expressions were solemn. Boom! Yen Miao's raised drumstick fell, and a second sound rang out. Then, a third, a fourth. At first, the drum beats were sparse, but they gradually became more concentrated. After 10 beats, a bizarre scene appeared. The faint red color of the drum surface suddenly deepened, as if it was soaked in blood. Every time the drumsticks fell, it seemed as if they were smashing into a pool of blood. Ripples visible to the naked eye radiated out in all directions from the center of the 5 drums. They swept out like waves, surging tides, and even the empty starry sky became sparkling as these ripples spread out. End of chapter. Chapter 2026. The drum beats continued to sound. When the drum beats reached a certain density, the rhythm was maintained. The sparkling starry sky became increasingly illusory, as if a formless sea had really descended. All the cultivators who were fighting were enveloped by this formless sea. Lu Yi raised his eyebrows slightly because he discovered something very interesting. As the mermaid clan's drumbeats sounded, a mysterious power seemed to fall on his body out of thin air, causing his magic power to circulate more smoothly. His thoughts became clearer, and even his qi and blood surged. His strength increased quite a bit out of thin air. Although the increase was not as great as Hupo's, it was still considerable. It was about 10%. The allied army of Jade Conch cultivators had been blessed by the soul race's soul possession, causing their strength to soar. Now, the merfolk race had a similar ability as well. With the double blessing, every cultivator's strength had increased tremendously. The demon venerables could not figure out why they were no match for the little human Rizhao. They would probably be even more confused later. Compared to the Soul Tribe's possession technique, the Mermaid Clan's blessing was not as effective, but the range was large enough. How could they distinguish between friend and foe? After all, Yen Miao could not distinguish between friend and foe in such a vast area. Lu Yi suddenly remembered that Yen Miao had asked him to take a drop of blood essence from all the cultivators. At that time, he did not know what Yen Miao wanted to do, but he agreed readily and ordered the Cultivator Alliance to cooperate. Now, looking at the blood-red surface of the drum in front of Yen Miao, Lu Yi immediately understood that Yen Miao needed the cultivator's blood essence for this moment. This was the fundamental reason why the Mermaid Clan's secret technique could distinguish between friend and foe. The blood essence that had been taken away should have been absorbed by the drum. Only the cultivator whose blood essence had been absorbed would be able to receive the blessing of the Mermaid Clan's secret technique. Was this the surprise that Yen Miao mentioned? This was really a surprise. No wonder Yen Miao said that she could not directly participate in the battle. Now that she was leading the Mermaid Clan and using the clan artifact to cast this secret technique, it would bring her much greater benefits than if she participated in the battle alone. The drum beats continued, and the entire battlefield was enveloped by the formless sea. The demon venerables finally realized that something was wrong. Because with the drum beats, their opponents seemed to have suddenly become stronger. This was inconceivable. They were already in a state of suppression. Now that their opponents had become stronger, the suppression became even stronger. It wasn't over yet. Suddenly, an illusory singing voice accompanied by the beating of the drums resounded through the starry sky. The singing voice was wondrous, as if it was a kind of awkward chant, but no one could tell what it was. This wondrous chant didn't have much effect on the Jade Conch Cultivator Alliance. They only felt that this ethereal chant was very pleasing to the ear. However, this was not the case for Zixin's demonic cultivators. When the song entered their ears, it suddenly turned into a sharp sound. It was as if someone was screaming in their ears, disturbing their minds and making them anxious. Even their divine sense C began to tremble. This situation was more obvious for the lower the cultivation level of the cultivator. Only demon venerables were not affected much. As for the rest of the demonic cultivators, even if they used their magic power to block their ears, it would be of no use. This was because the sound of the drum beating on their hearts could easily transmit this chant into their minds. On the deck, 5 large drums vibrated incessantly. Nearly 200 mermaids had pious expressions on their faces as they sang in unison. They didn't seem to be singing, but more like they were worshipping. The cultivators from both sides finally came into direct contact. After the demonic cultivators lost their warships, the hastily organized defense should have been of some use. After all, they had quite a number of people. Even if Lu Yi killed many of them, their numbers were still equal to that of the Jade Conch cultivators. If nothing unexpected happened, the Jade Conch cultivators would win, but they would have to pay a certain price. However, with the appearance of the mermaids, the demonic cultivators' organized defense instantly became a joke. The Soul Clan and the Mermaid Clan, the two major races, each had their own miraculous secret techniques to boost the strength of every Jade Conch cultivator by at least 30%. As for the demonic cultivators, they were affected by the mermaid's chant, and their strength was reduced. With this increase and decrease, the gap between the two sides widened. The moment they clashed, the Jade Conch alliance broke through the defenses of the Yao cultivators as easily as crushing dry weeds. The entire army of several thousand people, led by the many Yu Yao, transformed into a sharp blade that stabbed into the enemy ranks. Accompanied by the sound of the war drums, the slaughter began. Song of the Tides. The Mermaid Clan? A furious roar reverberated through the starry sky. It was none other than the most experienced and knowledgeable Bai Chen. At this moment, he was blocking Chen Xuanhai's ferocious attacks while looking in the direction of the Mermaid Clan in disbelief. Even though he had lived for tens of thousands of years, he never thought that he would be able to see the legendary Mermaid Clan again. Moreover, he had personally experienced the terrifying profundity of their secret techniques. He had read some records about the Mermaid Clan in ancient records. This race's greatest strength wasn't in battle, but in their ability to provide assistance in battle. Just like what was happening right now. There were less than 200 mermaids, but they were far more useful than their numbers. Where was this place? Why were there first the Blood Clan, then the Lesser Clan, and now even the Mermaid Clan? They were going to the Jade Conch cultivators, but they had plunged headfirst into a tiger's den. Most importantly, they didn't even know why these races were making things difficult for Zixian. Bai Chen sensed that the life force was disappearing one after another. He knew that it was the Yao cultivators who were dying. There were nearly 10,000 of them. How many of them would survive after this battle? Moreover, the Yao venerables were at an absolute disadvantage. If this continued, not only would the Yao venerables not be able to escape, but even the Yao venerables would suffer losses. Let's go! Bai Chen transmitted his voice and made a decision. Today's battle was too messy. They couldn't delay it any longer. The most important thing now was to escape. At the very least, they had to figure out which galaxy they were in. Although he was no match for Chen Xianhai, he was confident that no one on the battlefield could stop him as he was at the peak of the Sunshine Realm. He would just have to pay a price if he wanted to escape. Zixian had suffered such a great loss because she wasn't prepared. It wouldn't be too late to take revenge in the future when she was fully prepared. As soon as he finished speaking, he activated his secret technique and took Chen Xuanhai's attack head-on. His body rolled back with the help of the recoil. His qi and blood dispersed, and a wound appeared on his body. It was caused by Chen Xuanhai's talisman sword. In the next moment, his qi and blood wrapped around his body. He was about to escape. However, when he looked up, a young man appeared behind him. The young man was dressed in black and red clothes-fitting clothes. He was dressed like a weapon cultivator. There was a long saber at his waist and a gourd in his hand. He looked at Bai Chen expressionlessly. Bai Chen was stunned when he saw the young man's face. Lu Yi. He had never seen Lu Yi before. He recognized him at a glance because He Yun had shown Lu Ye's image to the Yao venerables. He Yun had long suspected that the inheritance of the Dao tree was with Lu Yi. He was afraid that the Yao venerables would kill Lu Yi by accident. Therefore, he let the Yao venerables see Lu Ye's image in advance so that they could capture him alive. Bai Chen was confused when he recognized Lu Yi. If Lu Yi is here, then isn't this Jade Conch Galaxy? But this Jade Conch Galaxy doesn't match the information provided by He Yun. Bai Chen didn't have time to think. He stretched out his hand and grabbed Lu Yi. His hand quickly enlarged and turned into a furry beast claw. It was obvious that he wanted to capture Lu Yi first. This was an opportunity for Bai Chen. He couldn't defeat Qin Xianhai, but he couldn't lose to Lu Yi. According to the information he received, Lu Yi was only Yu Yao. As long as he captured Lu Yi, Qin Xianhai would be afraid of him. He couldn't guarantee anything, but he could guarantee that the Yao venerables would escape unscathed. Lu Yi's strength had greatly increased due to his double enhancement, but he couldn't help but feel that he couldn't dodge this claw attack. After all, this was just a casual claw attack from Bai Chen before he escaped. The peak of the Sunshine Realm was indeed extraordinary. He was still far from it. But it didn't matter. He dared to stand here and stop Bai Chen because he had something to rely on. If his cultivation wasn't enough, he could make up for it with treasures. He patted the sword gourd lightly, and sword light swept out. Bai Chen's expression changed drastically. He hurriedly retracted his beast claw, and at the same time, activated his demon chi. But it was too late. The sword light pierced into his palm and flew up rapidly, piercing through his entire arm. Just as the sword light was about to reach his heart, it was finally stopped by his powerful cultivation. Bai Chen was also decisive. He raised his other hand and chopped off his broken arm. Blood spurted out from the wound. A treasure? Bai Chen's face turned pale. He didn't expect to encounter a treasure in this place. If he had known, he would have brought a treasure with him. The Zixuan demon star was rich and powerful. It wasn't as if they didn't have treasures. Lu Yi, who was not far away from him, sighed inwardly. The sword light nurtured in the sword gourd was powerful, but it consumed too quickly. He had tested it before. In order to nurture a complete sword light, it required a treasure worth about 500 million spiritual jades. Every time he used it, the sword light's power would be greatly depleted. To replenish the depleted power, he would need to spend 100 million spiritual jades. In other words, the sword light in the sword gourd could only be used 5 times before it completely disappeared. And each time, it would be weaker than the last. He had used the sword light once against Zixuan's largest warship. This was the second time. It was far weaker than the first time. And this was because he had caught Bai Chen off guard. If he hadn't used the sword gourd before, he could have killed Bai Chen directly. But it didn't matter. Just as Bai Chen was in a daze, Qin Xianhai was already standing behind him, holding the talisman sword in his hand. End of chapter. Chapter 2027. In a battle between masters, the difference between life and death was only a thin line. The appearance of the sword gourd had caught Bai Chen off guard. Qin Xianhai had found the perfect opportunity to strike while Bai Chen was in shock. The sword pierced through Bai Chen's protective demon vitality and came out of his body. Blood splattered everywhere. The physique of the demon clan was extremely strong, not to mention Bai Chen, who was at the peak of the demon clan. Even though he had lost an arm, his demon vitality, which he had cultivated for thousands of years, could not be broken by ordinary means. However, Qin Xianhai's talisman sword was not an ordinary talisman sword. It was the crystallization of his many years of cultivation. It could be said to be the best magical weapon in the world. Even so, it could not take Bai Chen's life immediately. He abruptly turned his head, his eyes almost popping out of their sockets as he raised his remaining arm and grabbed onto Qin Xianhai's wrist. His demon essence ferociously circulated and resisted Qin Xianhai's magic power, actually suppressing Qin Xianhai to the point that he was unable to move for a moment. Under the premise that demon vitality and mana were equal, Qin Xianhai's physical strength was no match for Bai Chen, who was a great demon venerable, even with the support of 2 secret techniques. "You want me to die?" Bai Chen's mouth reeked of blood. His eyes were deep and his aura was as strong as before. He did not weaken at all because of his injuries. "Then you may have to die with me." At this point, he did not want to continue the battle. He wanted to live by threatening Qin Xianhai. If Qin Xianhai hesitated, he would have a chance to escape. Unfortunately, Qin Xianhai's expression did not change at all. Instead, he looked at him with pity and sighed softly. "I've long heard of the great name of Azure Knight Demon Venerable. It's a pity, Bai Chen naturally knew what Chen Xianhai was feeling pity about. He glanced over and saw Lu Yi rushing over with his blade. He said coldly, "He's just a new Rizhao. I'll stand here and let him kill me. What can he do?" At this moment, he was fighting against Chen Xianhai, unable to move at all. He was really just a punching bag. Although he did not know how Lu Yi, who was only in the Yuyao realm, had become a Rizhao, he was just a new Rizhao. Just like how Yuyao could not hurt Rizhao, Bai Chen, who was at the peak of Rizhao, was confident that he could defeat a new Rizhao. Chen Xianhai could break his demon vitality because he was strong enough. Rizhao, a new Rizhao, how could he do that? Then you better stand properly. When Lu Yi heard Bai Chen's words, he responded with a faint grunt. With a few leaps, he arrived at Bai Chen's side and swung his Panshan saber down viciously. Bai Chen's eyes were filled with disdain. He was confident that Lu Yi wouldn't be able to do anything to him with his demon qi and physique. As long as he could get rid of Chen Xianhai, he would be able to escape. As for that treasure, Lu Yi had already taken it back. He knew that every time a treasure was used, it would take a long time to nurture it or cost a lot of money. After the sword light had cut through his arm, its power had been greatly reduced, so Bai Chen didn't care too much about it. The moment the blade fell, Lu Ye's right arm suddenly swelled up. Almost half of his mana and blood qi condensed in his right arm. The mountain blade became illusory in an instant, as if it had turned into an illusory blade shadow, without substance. His pure protective demonic essence was easily broken through. His flesh and blood were separated, and his head was separated from his body. Blood gushed out from his sliced neck like a fountain. His body convulsed and trembled. The huge head flew a distance away and floated beside him. Bai Chen blinked and looked at Lu Yi seriously. He opened his mouth and said, "What's the name of this blade?" Even though his head was separated from his body, he was still alive. This showed how terrifying his vitality was. Lu Yi was standing beside his body. Blood qi was rising from his right arm, and white fog was swirling around it. He turned his head and said, "Vibrating blade. I think it should be called a saw blade." As Bai Chen spoke, he looked down and stared at the Panshan saber in Lu Ye's hand. "You have a good blade." With 10,000 years of cultivation, Bai Chen's eyesight was extremely sharp. Whether it was the vibrating blade or the saw blade, it was actually just a technique. It was far from being called a blade technique. The main reason why it could explode with such terrifying power was the sharpness of the Panshan saber. If it had been any other Dharma treasure, it might not have had such an effect in the same situation. "No matter how good a blade is, it depends on who is using it," Lu Yi replied calmly. Bai Chen's words were obviously unconvincing. Of course, he wouldn't spoil him. Bai Chen didn't say anything. He slowly closed his eyes. However, at this moment, his eyes suddenly opened again. A terrifying wave of soul power swept out and attacked Lu Yi. He shouted, "Wu Wang!" In an instant, the pure soul power became visible to the naked eye. It turned into a ball of twisting energy. Before it even got close, Lu Yi felt a great threat. Bai Chen's eyes flashed with a trace of satisfaction. How could he be willing to be beheaded by a newly ascended sunshine? Bai Chen's calmness was just a disguise. He chatted a little to make Lu Yi lower his guard. The real killing move was unleashed at the last moment. He didn't want to die so carelessly. Even if he died, he wanted to drag Lu Yi down with him. This was the soul-suppressing secret technique that he had painstakingly cultivated for countless years. It was the embodiment of his soul. No matter what happened to Lu Yi, his soul would be destroyed. Bai Chen thought that Lu Yi would panic, but when he looked up, Lu Yi was just standing there calmly, as if he didn't notice the danger at all. On the other hand, Chen Xuanhai's side suddenly flashed and a strange figure appeared in front of Lu Yi, raising a hand to block the soul-suppressing secret technique he had just used. Bai Chen was extremely shocked. He stared at the strange figure that suddenly appeared and vaguely felt that this person didn't seem to be made of flesh and blood. When he thought of all the things that had happened before, and the fact that Sunshine of the Hominid clan had erupted with strength far beyond his imagination, an incredible thought burst into his mind. The Soul Clan? That's right, So it's the soul race's soul possession technique. I was wondering how Nicho of the dwarf race could be so strong. It turns out that he has the help of the soul race. No wonder when I fought with Chen Xianhai, I was at an absolute disadvantage. In the cultivation of the soul Dao, who could be stronger than the soul clan? Even if he used the soul-suppressing secret technique, it was nothing in front of the soul clan. Many of his doubts were answered. He wanted to send a voice transmission to inform the other demon venerables, but endless darkness came and enveloped his body and mind. His head was separated from his body. Even a demon venerable like him couldn't hold on any longer. In Sunshine's battle group, Zixian's aura was annihilated. The other demon venerables who were already panicking were even more terrified. Although they were no match for Sunshine of the Hominid clan, as long as the two demon venerables were alive, they still had hope of escaping. But now, the strongest Bai Chen was the first to fall. They were all fighting desperately in their own battles. No one knew how Bai Chen died. The only thing they knew was that they couldn't stay in this dangerous place for long. All the demon venerables were trying to break out. They were already no match for Sunshine of the Hominid clan, and the impact of Bai Chen's death made their situation even more worrisome. Especially one of the demon venerables who had been fighting against two Sunshine of the Hominid clan alone. Although it was difficult, he could still hold on. Now that he was distracted, he was severely injured. He roared angrily. If he didn't take out his demon core and put up a desperate fight, he would have followed in Bai Chen's footsteps. But once he took out his demon core, there was no turning back. It was a release of his own strength. He couldn't maintain it for long. Once he couldn't escape, he would become a fish on the chopping board. Beside Bai Chen's corpse, Lu Yi and Chen Xianhai had already disappeared. The two of them rushed in different directions, full of murderous intent. Zixian's attack, Bai Chen's death, was just the beginning. This battle was to hurt Zixian and cripple her. Only then could the world know that Jade Conch was not a soft persimmon that anyone could bully. Only then could they have enough deterrence. Chen Xianhai chose the nearest battle group. With his participation, there was no need to think about the result of that battle. When the time came, their advantage would snowball. Lu Yi went straight to Su Yuqing. He had obtained a lot of accurate information about Zixian from Qin Yi. Of course, he recognized that the one fighting against Su Yuqing was another greater demon venerable, Zixian. He seemed to be called Emo Xian. When Lu Yi arrived, Emo Xian was struggling to deal with Su Yuqing's attacks. Su Yuqing's fighting style wasn't as imposing as Chen Xuanhai's. It was more like flowing water. She used all kinds of spiritual talismans and never faced Emo Xian head-on. However, it was this style that made Emo Xian feel so uncomfortable that he almost vomited blood. If Su Yuqing's strength was not as strong as his, he could totally defeat her fighting style with brute force. This was what demon cultivators were best at. But with the double support of the Soul Clan and the Mermaid Clan, Su Yuqing's strength was much stronger than Emo Xian's. This gave Emo Xian the feeling that his opponent was slowly teasing him. He repeatedly wanted to sacrifice his demon core and fight to the death, but he couldn't bear to do so. It was only when Bai Chen's aura suddenly disappeared that he was shocked. He knew that if he hesitated any longer, he might not even have the chance to escape. With a thought, he immediately sacrificed his demon core. Su Yuqing, of course, knew the pros and cons. She scattered spiritual talismans to form a defense. However, under the fierce attack of Emo Xian's demon core, these defenses didn't have much effect. Once her technique was broken through, Emo Xian could attack and kill, or he could escape from her entanglement and escape. There would be many choices for him to choose from. This was definitely not what Su Yuqing wanted to see. A trace of determination flashed across her brows. She gently opened her red lips. The demon clan had demon cores, but she also had her own inner core. Although they were not the same thing, they were similar in nature. However, just as she was about to sacrifice her inner core, Su Yuqing suddenly saw Lu Ye's figure rushing over. At the same time, Lu Ye's voice sounded in her ears. "Leave it to me." Su Yuqing immediately shut her mouth. She calmed down and threw out a spiritual talisman to protect herself. Lu Ye's sudden intrusion made Emo Xian extremely vigilant. He scanned with his divine perception and found that the intruder was only at the early sunshine stage. He was relieved. End of chapter. Chapter 2028. When Xian and Su Yuqing were at the pinnacle of sunshine, ordinary sunshine cultivators would not be able to interfere. Therefore, Xian did not pay much attention to Lu Ye's arrival. He did not even see Lu Ye's appearance clearly. This demon venerable was destined to pay the price for his arrogance. If he knew that Lu Yi was directly related to Bai Chen's death, he would not have underestimated Lu Yi. At this moment, he was still activating his Yao Dan until he heard the sound of a sword. Xian's skin tightened. When he turned his head, a sword light was already not far away from him. He sensed that the power was not strong, but it was definitely not weak either. This was Lu Ye's third time activating the sword light from the sword gourd. The first time, it easily broke through the defense of a Sunshine-class warship. The second time, it destroyed one of Bai Chen's arms. According to Lu Ye's own exploration and understanding of the sword light from the sword gourd, as long as the sword light was not damaged, it could explode with power that ordinary Sunshine-class cultivators could not resist. If he had used the sword gourd against Bai Chen the first time, he should have been able to kill him. The second time, the sword light was weaker than the first, but even a strong cultivator like Bai Chen could not completely block it. As for the third time, there was a chance to hurt Xian, but as for killing him, there was not much hope. The key was to see how Xian would deal with it. If he was careless, he would be facing the combined attack of Lu Yi and Su Yuqing. Xian was not careless. In other words, he did not have the right to be careless at this moment. Even if the sword light was weakened twice, Xian did not have the ability to block it. This was because after using his Yao Dan, his strength was greatly reduced, and most of his strength was concentrated on his Yao Dan. Therefore, in the face of this incoming sword light, he did not hesitate to call back his Yao Dan. He did not even have time to put it back into his body. He directly activated his Yao Dan to meet the sword light. The moment they collided, a violent force was released. Xian groaned, and the sword light dimmed a lot. Lu Yi called it back into the sword gourd. Looking up, Xian's face flashed with an abnormal flush. There was no doubt that his Yao Dan was damaged in the collision just now. Xian was furious. Although he was at a disadvantage in the battle with Su Yuqing, he was not seriously injured. Who knew that Lu Yi would make him suffer a loss? How could he tolerate this? Moreover, Su Yuqing was already charging in from the side. At this moment, his Yao core was shaking, and his Yao Yuan was unstable. If Su Yuqing and Lu Yi joined forces, he would be in a dire situation. He had to deal with this early-stage sunshine guy first so that he could deal with Su Yuqing in peace. Suddenly, he raised his head and looked at Lu Yi, a mysterious aura surging from his body as he shouted, "Heaven and Earth Inc." As his voice fell, Lu Yi discovered to his astonishment that boundless black color was gushing out from his ink-black eyes, dyeing the starry sky. In the blink of an eye, the surroundings were plunged into darkness. There was no light at all. Not only that, but Lu Yi couldn't even sense his own existence. It was as if his 5 senses had been stripped away in this boundless darkness. All that was left of him was a mass of consciousness floating in the darkness, alone and without a shore, never to see the light of day. What kind of secret technique was this? No, this was not a secret technique, this was an eye technique. Lu Yi suddenly recalled the scene before the unforeseen event and immediately reacted. What he saw was not the truth. In other words, that boundless black color did not surge out from Xian's eyes. It was just his own misconception. The real situation was not what he saw. Eye technique, Lu Ye's mind settled. It just so happened that he also had a similar method. Exhaling softly, he closed his eyes. When his eyes opened, countless mysterious lines were outlined in his eyes and quickly formed. At the same time, magic power and soul power surged. "Blood moon, in the sky!" Lu Yi shouted. In the world shrouded in darkness, a blood moon suddenly rose into the sky. The crimson color seemed to be made of fresh blood, and blood dripped down from it. It looked extremely terrifying. More importantly, This blood moon looked like a huge eye, shining in the sky and overlooking all living things. The black and crimson light collided violently, a silent contest between two eye techniques. A short moment later, a crisp sound rang out. The boundless darkness shattered, and the distant world returned once again. Lu Yi looked up and saw Emotion pouncing towards him. At this moment, this guy was less than 100 feet away from him. For a peak Sunshine Realm cultivator, this distance was like face-to-face contact. Emotion's large hand had already reached out. His fingernails were sharp and cold. He also saw Su Yuqing's anxious and panicked face behind Emotion. She was rushing towards Emotion, obviously trying to stop Emotion before he was in danger. But judging from the distance between them, she probably wouldn't make it in time. Lu Yi broke out in cold sweat. He felt like he was about to collapse. In that instant, he had poured almost all of his power into the Blood Moon Spirit Rune. Although this spiritual pattern came from the Blood Ancestor and was unfathomable, his cultivation was far inferior to Emotion's. Therefore, he didn't dare to hold back in order to resist Emotion's eye technique. Fortunately, the effect was very obvious. The Blood Moon spiritual pattern that he used all of his energy to cast was indeed not something that Emotion's eye technique could resist. At that moment, when his eye technique was broken, Emotion obviously suffered a backlash and was affected by the Blood Moon spiritual pattern. Back then, when Lu Yi challenged the illusory blood magic eye, he had personally experienced the terror of the illusory blood magic eye's blink. It was a space wonder that Sunshine Realm cultivators couldn't enter. The main reason was that the illusory blood magic eye's blink came from the blood moon in the core of Mount Fengzun. After all, the blood moon spiritual pattern came from the blood ancestor's inheritance. Emotion's eye technique couldn't compare at all. Emotion closed the distance of 100 feet in an instant. He was still in his attacking posture, but he seemed to have lost his mind. His body was stiff, and his demonic eyes were imprinted with crimson light, as if the blood moon was reflected in them. Lu Yi pulled out his saber and stabbed it straight at Emotion's chest. He originally wanted to build the Divine Blade spiritual pattern to strengthen himself, but he realized that there wasn't a single drop of spiritual power left in his body. In that short period of time, he had used up all his spiritual power. The stab was soft and powerless. Although the Pan Mountain Saber was sharp enough to pierce into Emotion's body, it only went 3 inches into his flesh. It wasn't a serious injury at all. This was all thanks to Emotion being trapped in the eye technique and not activating his protective demonic chi. If he had, Lu Yi's attack wouldn't even have been able to pierce through his skin. The slightly stiff Emotion suddenly trembled slightly. His turbid eyes showed signs of recovering, and the crimson color began to dissipate. After all, he was at the peak of the Sunshine Realm. Although he was trapped in the eye technique due to the backlash, it wouldn't last long. After being stimulated by the pain, he would wake up immediately. Yuqing! Lu Yi shouted. After knowing each other for so many years, they had a tacit understanding of each other. It could be said that they had long reached the level where Lu Yi could casually pat Su Yuqing and she would flip over. Su Yuqing knew what Lu Yi's intention was when he shouted. She instantly pounced behind Emotion and ruthlessly struck out with her palm. Emotion threw himself into Lu Yi's arms, and the long saber pierced through his body. The intense pain finally allowed Emotion to escape from the eye technique's backlash. His dark eyes quickly regained clarity, but it was too late. Lu Yi kicked out and sent him flying. Su Yuqing grabbed him and quickly ran away. In the distance, Emotion lowered his head and looked at his chest. He couldn't believe that he had suffered such a serious injury. If it was just a simple stab wound, it wouldn't be too serious for him, even if the wound was on his chest, but at this moment, he could clearly feel that there was an extremely strange power lingering around the wound, hindering his recovery. Even with his peak Sunshine Realm strength, he couldn't dispel it in a short time. As Lu Yi had reached the Sunshine Realm, the quality of the Pan Mountain Saber had also improved. The power of brightness had become even more difficult to deal with. This strange power was like a maggot in one's bones, constantly hindering his recovery and tearing his body apart. In other words, if he didn't get rid of the power of brightness as soon as possible, his injuries would only worsen. How dare you hurt me? I want you dead. Emo Xian raised his head and glared at Lu Yi. It was fine that he couldn't defeat Su Yuqing. She was also a peak Sunshine Realm cultivator and had the qualifications to be on equal footing with him. But now, even an early Sunshine Realm cultivator dared to hurt him. Emo Xian glared at Lu Yi fiercely, as if he was going to pounce on Lu Yi in the next moment. But to everyone's astonishment, not only did he not pounce on Lu Yi, he actually turned around and ran away after shouting those words. How could an expert like him lose his mind because of a momentary loss? Now that Bai Chen was dead, the other beast venerables couldn't escape, and the tens of thousands of beast venerables had suffered heavy casualties. If he didn't leave now, he wouldn't have another chance. Only by surviving can I have a chance to take revenge. This was what he had been working hard for. Unfortunately, he hadn't found a chance to do so. He didn't expect that the opportunity would come so soon. Looking at the direction he fled in, both Lu Yi and Su Yuqing had no intention of chasing after him. They just watched quietly. Explode! Su Yuqing suddenly said softly. Emo Xian, who had already fled far away, suddenly stopped. His eyes were filled with extreme fear. He lowered his head and looked at his chest. At this moment, he felt an extremely terrifying aura erupting from within his body. He raised his hand and stabbed it into his chest, grabbing a burning sensation. It's a talisman. And there's more than one. When did this happen? Emo Xian's eyes were filled with despair. He finally understood why no one chased after him. It was because there was no need to. If it was any other time, he would be able to detect any abnormalities in his body easily. As a peak Sunshine Realm cultivator, he naturally knew his body like the back of his hand. But in this battle, he was injured by the Fang Blade. The power of the Fang Blade was so strange that he didn't notice that Su Yuqing had placed a few powerful talismans in his body. A violent tremor spread out. A huge ball of fire instantly bloomed where Emo Xian was. The strong vitality was completely destroyed at this moment. End of chapter. That you're tuning in to the Han Li's Immortal Journey YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.